Chapter 26. The next day. Refreshed, Rob and Madison arrive at Heather's former home. Instead of worshipping each other, the two of them used the smelting equipment left by her husband to melt the golden arm. After Heather was institutionalized, the golden arm became a harmless object. No one wants to keep this stuff made of real gold. Wouldn't it be better to sell it for money? Considering that the people in this place are very afraid of the golden arm, no one dares to buy it. Rob planned to melt the golden arm back into the shape of gold bars and then sell it. Half an hour later. After the operation was completed, the golden arm no longer existed. Instead, there were 3 gold bars weighing 1 kilogram each. Unlike the previous life, which was affected by a series of events such as war and turbulent world situation, the price of 1 gram of gold soared to $60 or $70, more than double that of 10 years ago. In the era that Rob lives in, the price of gold is still stable at around $40. By this calculation, the golden arm is worth about 120,000 yuan. This is a considerable income. No wonder Heather's husband lost everything and even regretted it and wanted to take the golden arm back then. It is no wonder that outsiders who heard the news took the risk to come and steal the golden arm. Greed destroyed them. Even if there was only one person left and he ran all the way to New Orleans, and even transferred the golden arm to Rob, he would still die tragically under the curse. In the end, Rob and Madison got the upper hand. Carrying 3 gold bars, Rob and his companion drove to the jewelry store in the county center. Although the two did not have legal documents to prove the source of the gold, every place was welcoming to their purchase of gold. Plus, Alpena County has a very lax policy in this regard. Although the price was slightly lowered, Rob still sold the gold successfully. Splitting it in half with Madison, he got almost $60,000. This is definitely a huge amount of money for young Americans, whose finances are in the negative most of the time. Rob was pleased. This trip not only helped me to meet the mission targets and improve my abilities, but also provided me with a good bit of extra income and physical comfort. The absolute winner. For a long time, I will no longer have to face the embarrassing situation of using girls' money when living in the United States. Rob, you've finally come out, so don't rush home. How about a road trip? Madison, who also earned a good income, looked at Rob and said excitedly. Rob was stunned. Road trip? Yeah. A road trip just for you and me. Madison came close and kissed Rob on the corner of his mouth. After finally leaving the boring witch academy and meeting a man who was very much her match physically and mentally, she really wanted to relax. Road trip happens to be one of the most popular ways for young Americans to travel. Drive a car with good friends, travel on the endless highway, feel the vast and magnificent natural scenery along the way, and appreciate the different cultural customs and human landscapes of each state. This is also one of the unique cultures of America. Derived from this, there are also various strange legends about murderers, cults, and even various monsters on highways, conservative towns, uninhabited areas and so on. Hollywood makes this kind of movie all the time. Generally speaking, it is a story about a group of to-be young people who were driving out for a trip. After hearing a horror rumor, they ignored the locals' advice and went to camp at the place where the incident occurred. As a result, they were attacked and went to see God. Madison played it. As for why I know. During the intermission yesterday, the two found a lot of discs in the house, including this type of movie starring Madison. Rob naturally opened it and read it. This made him more courageous in subsequent battles. Then go ahead. Rob thought about it and nodded. Now that the hanging beam above his head was temporarily gone, he also wanted to relax. You can't just think about fighting the supernatural all day long. He didn't want to die one day, look back on the past, and find that his life as a time traveler was not good at all. Luxury cars, beautiful women, and wilderness. Together, it is definitely a memory worth remembering. This can also help newcomers to integrate better into the place. Of course, it would be nice if we could encounter cult members with truly weird powers and all kinds of legendary monsters along the way, just like in the movies. For this type of task indicators, Rob naturally believes that the more the better. But before that, Rob, you still have to buy a car, Madison reminded. Rob nodded, of course. In America, where the land is vast and the population is sparse, public transportation is not dense and gas is not expensive, it is difficult to get around without a car. Almost every family has a car. Rob wanted to buy one since he would have to travel to many places in the future. It just so happens that I have a huge sum of money now. So, after driving to a car rental company that also sold cars, and after a fierce bargaining battle with the owner, Rob bought a well-equipped Chevrolet for $20,000. After driving their new car back to the county center and completing some shopping, Rob and Madison, in a good mood, officially started their road trip. They would first go south along Highway 75 to Detroit, then go west via Highway 94 to Chicago, and finally, through a series of turns on Highway 55 and Highway 12 they would finally arrive in New Orleans. Although this series of routes is not as famous as Route 66, which starts in Chicago, Illinois and ends in Santa Monica and Los Angeles, California. But it was definitely a good trip. Especially for single men and women. 3 days later, a dusty Chevrolet drove into downtown New Orleans. Sitting in the car were Rob and Madison, who were inevitably tired after the hustle and bustle. There were no accidents along the way. Except for passing through Chicago, I briefly experienced the local culture. At a gas station on the way, Madison was recognized by a group of young people who were also traveling and had nowhere to go. They wanted to drive this honest Asian male companion away, but he ended up being beaten up by him, who had a physique of 1.4 meters and was wearing American III. That was all that happened. There is no extra money as imagined. The only exception is the large-scale consumption of using the sky as a blanket and the ground as a bed. In this way, while dealing with the Witch Academy and searching for clues, they stopped and walked, left one deep memory after another on the earth, and experienced the baptism of nature physically and mentally. Finally, Rob and Madison, a couple who were satisfied, stepped on the accelerator and finally returned to New Orleans. Looking at the words Robichaux School of Outstanding Girls written on the door plate, Rob honked the car horn. As always, the door opened on its own. The largest gathering place of the supernatural in New Orleans once again comes into view. Chapter 27. Madison, I need to tell you something. The door opened, and Rob, who was not in a hurry to go in, turned his head and said with a serious expression. Madison, who was putting on makeup, didn't even raise her head and asked, "What's wrong? You want me not to tell your Black Widow girlfriend that we had S***X? Don't worry, it won't be long before I can make her join in willingly." That's good, wait. Rob, who was almost diverted from the topic, quickly put away his longing expression and said seriously, "That's not what I want to talk about. Madison, when you go back, it's best not to tell others about your awakened new abilities, especially Fiona." Hearing this, Madison finally put down the mirror, looked up and asked in confusion, "Why?" She also wanted to show off her abilities in front of all the witches. Rob simply explained, in every generation of Salem witches, a supreme witch emerges. The old ones grow old, and the new ones take over. But the handover between two generations of supreme witches is not so peaceful. The new young supreme witch will absorb the magic power of the previous generation of supreme witch faster until the other party dies. Think about it, what would the last supreme witch think when she witnessed her own vitality draining away? It would be fine if she was sensible. But what if she was attached to everything in the human world and was afraid of death? What would she think about the source of her own downfall? What would she do? Madison's face fell. Growing up in Hollywood, an environment where white paper will turn black, she recognized the reality and cruelty of this society earlier than her peers. Judging from her own experience, she continued thoughtfully, "If I were the supreme witch, I would kill the next generation of successors to stop my own decline." Rob said meaningfully, "As for Fiona, we can get a glimpse of her attitude towards her biological daughter, Cordelia. So, Madison, don't expose your talent. If you really can't, you can tell others about your heart murmur symptoms. After all, you know me and I know you." In order to prevent Madison from being considered the next supreme witch by Fiona and having her throat slit as originally planned, Rob tried to save her. Madison obviously listened to the persuasion. She nodded solemnly, then asked in confusion, "What does this have to do with heart murmurs?" She was not surprised that Rob knew this. After all, they had been together for some time, and she did not avoid him, and occasionally used an instrument to check her heartbeat. Rob looked at her, thought for a moment and said, "Those who become the supreme witch are always in very good health, without exception." Madison was stunned. After several seconds, she gritted her teeth and said, "FK." This news was undoubtedly a bolt from the blue for her who aspired to become the supreme witch. "Is it really like that? How do you know so much?" she asked repeatedly, somewhat unwillingly. Rob said casually, "I'll just look through the books in the academy. I'm very interested in the history of witches. Madison remained silent, knowing full well that Rob would not deliberately lie to her. Open your eyes, Madison. You should know that there are more witches in this world than just Salem. Just because you can't become the supreme witch doesn't mean you can't become stronger. Isn't your magic power still growing rapidly during this period? Rob looked at Madison. With his spiritual perception, he could find that in these 3 days, the witch power in Madison's body was increasing rapidly like a rocket. Apparently, this adventure accelerated the awakening and development of her witch bloodline. Rob couldn't envy her even if he wanted to. It's because he doesn't have wizard blood. Witch, the evil spirits are out. Who knows if there will be any more strange legends in the future? Maybe there is a way to cure your physiological heart murmur. Or maybe you can learn a more powerful power beyond witches. Rob comforted. Thank you for your good words. If something like this happens, remember to call me. Madison calmed down and said, also, thank you for the reminder. It should be. Rob responded and drove into the manor. There, Cordelia, Zoe, Queenie, Nan, and a fat middle-aged woman in a maid outfit were already waiting. Rob, I'm glad you're okay. As soon as Rob got out of the car, he was hugged tightly by a soft body. It was Zoe who didn't want to wait any longer. On the side, Madison, who also got out of the car, had covered up the heavy look on her face. She first glanced at Zoe, who was passionately throwing herself into Rob's arms, then noticed the strange maid in the house, and interrupted the intimacy of the two with bright eyes. It's only been a few days, how come there's another maid? Rob, it looks like you're going to be out of a job. Hearing this, Rob, who felt a little awkward being intimate in public, patted Zoe on the back, put her down, and responded with a smile, if that's the case, then I'm so pitiful. Principal Cordelia, you won't really fire me, will you? Of course not. Delphi was just an accident. Cordelia smiled. There will always be a place for you here, Rob. That's good. Rob breathed a sigh of relief and glanced at the gloomy Delphi. This fat woman is Mrs. Lalaurie, who has lived for more than 200 years after being cursed by a voodoo witch. Rob said that he was willing to fight a dozen of these curses that could make someone immortal and invincible. Come in, there's a real welcoming party waiting for you inside. By the way, let me tell you the whole process of solving the evil spirit. Cordelia said at this time. Rob and Madison nodded, and after walking into the house with everyone else, they narrated their thrilling experiences of fighting against evil spirits in a very emotional and exaggerated manner. Thousands of miles away. Just as Rob was boasting about his great achievements to a group of witches and house girls. Green Township, Alpena County. Although Heather had been taken in, there were no more roars or footsteps at night. But 3 days is too short after all. Even though they had doubts in their hearts, the people who remained in Greentown still maintained the necessary fear and vigilance. The town was as deserted as ever. In this environment, 3 black SUVs drove in and headed straight for the cemetery where Heather was buried. The car door opened. Led by 2 men in black suits, a team of 10 people dressed in black combat uniforms, armed to the teeth but without any insignia of their department, got off the car and took out some high-tech equipment that obviously looked sophisticated. 5 minutes later, the armed personnel who was operating the instrument screen said, no spirit entity was found. The leading man in a suit uttered a light hum and then looked at his companion beside him. The latter understood and quickly opened the heavily insured silver briefcase he was carrying, took out the only ancient compass inside, injected a 100 ml bottle of blood into it, and said, "Where's Heather Neymark?" In an instant, the needle on the compass began to spin rapidly. 1 minute, 2 minutes. Seeing the terrifying scream coming from the still spinning compass, he no longer hesitated and quickly put it back into the suitcase and closed the case tightly. After the screams stopped, he breathed a sigh of relief and said, "It seems that Heather Neymark is still here, but she has left." The leader in suits nodded. Generally, evil spirits will not leave the range in front of it. Obviously, someone took it away. Do you need to find that person? No need. No matter what his purpose is, he will eventually use it, or be used by it. This also saves us trouble. But... no buts. Are you one of those saints from the Savior Party? No. That's not very good. Let's let it play outside more so we don't get our hands dirty. Chapter 28. Witch Academy. Rob's vivid description of the battle against evil spirits not only opened the eyes of the witches including Cordelia, but also made the new maid Delphi busy delivering tea and snacks back and forth. Seeing that the welcome party was over, Delphi, who was over 200 years old, was about to breathe a sigh of relief and give her old bones a good rest. Queenie called out to her again, "I'm not full yet, give me some more peach pie." Delphi clenched her hands and said unhappily, "Still eating? You won't be able to find a man like this. If you were my daughter, I would definitely lock that ice box and throw away the key." Having said that, she still walked towards the ice box, or refrigerator, to get the ingredients. After her racist remarks angered everyone when she first arrived, Fiona deliberately gave her to Queenie as a slave. She suffered a lot during these few days of getting along. Otherwise, she should have responded by now, "How dare you open your filthy mouth at me, you lowlife NR," instead of just being unhappy. Rob paid no attention to these little incidents. With some spare money, he gave the witches the small gifts he had bought on the road. Finally, he came to Nan and handed her the new headphones he had specially prepared for her. He winked and said, "Keep it a secret, Nan." Nan took the new headphones and nodded happily, "Okay." Although she couldn't read Rob's mind, Madison could. She naturally knew what the real experience was, so she was trying to hold back her laughter. She had been thinking about whether or not to tell the truth, but now that she had been bribed by Rob, she immediately gave up the idea. Nan, who has been regarded as a freak by others since childhood, has never received any gifts except from his relatives. Rob certainly made up for her. With her favorable impression of the other party greatly increased, she naturally listened to what the other party said. The welcoming ceremony is over. Rob returned to his room and was packing up the luggage he brought back when there was a knock on the door. It was his cheap girlfriend. At this time, Zoe was already wearing the gift that she had given herself, a beautiful blue dress. "Does it look good?" she asked as she turned around, her skirt fluttering, revealing her straight and slender calves. "Of course." Rob nodded. Hearing this, Zoe's smile widened. No longer suppressing her fiery emotions, she threw herself into Rob's arms, brought the two of them into the room, raised her legs, closed the door heavily, and spent time together as a couple. With no one watching, Rob also relaxed and began to enjoy the youthful feeling of having someone else, the old driver Madison. Unfortunately, in the end, the gun could only be touched but not fired accidentally. "It would have been nice if it was me who went with you instead of Madison." After they separated, Zoe said regretfully, panting. It was already a bad feeling for her to have to sit at home while her boyfriend was in danger, and the person who went with her was Madison, who obviously had feelings for her boyfriend, which made her feel even more threatened. If she wasn't afraid of disturbing him, she would have wanted to talk to Rob on the phone every moment. "It can't be helped. Madison is also cursed," Rob explained. "Besides, you have only been here for a few days and haven't learned much about witches. I don't feel safe if you really want to go with me." Zoe looked a little gloomy. Compared to Madison, Queenie, and Nan, her abilities really don't have much effect. "Next, I will study hard," she said solemnly. "This is not only about strength, but also about the happiness of both people." If it weren't for her health problems, she wouldn't have been so unconfident when facing Rob and even Madison. Do you really think she didn't notice Madison's little actions behind the scenes? Rob didn't know what Zoe was going through, he just used chicken soup from China to cheer her up. Soon, seeing Zoe, who was so excited that she wanted to study late into the night, go back to study, he sighed slightly. Although he inherited the memories of his predecessor, he is obviously not that sincere in terms of emotions. To be honest, she is not as real as Madison, who has been with me through thick and thin these days. As for why not leaving Zoe? Of course it's because of my identity. Well, to put it bluntly, it's all selfishness. He originally felt a little guilty. But when comparing himself with the American teenagers who spent more time having fun, Rob felt a lot more at ease because he thought he was still a good young man. As the future father and savior of the American people, is it normal to be loved by so many women? Of course it's normal. Now, let's adapt and take precautions for a bright future. It's impossible for a lifetime of fame to be ruined by continuous romantic scandals. Thinking this in his heart, Rob nodded heavily. Then, he received a temptation. Looking at the bathroom selfie sent by Madison on the phone, Rob kept it silently and then told Madison righteously that it was wrong to do so. Was she trying to create a scandal like her Hollywood predecessors? Madison expressed regret and deleted the picture immediately. Just as Rob was sighing that this young boy is teachable, a new message came. "Open the door." "Is this a door-opening thing?" It really destroys my spiritual resolve all the time. In order to resist temptation and improve your self-level. Rob touched his waist and refused righteously. In the end, he enjoyed a quiet and peaceful night as he wished. The next day, Rob, who had no awareness of being a butler, woke up almost at the same time as the witches, and went downstairs together to enjoy the breakfast prepared by Spaulding and Delphi. Spaulding was not as repulsive to Delphi as he was to Rob, and he obviously knew that the other party was not the same kind of person as him. At the dinner table, Cordelia had no problem with Rob's late rising. After hearing yesterday's story, Zoe no longer regarded this unique boyfriend as a servant. He was able to fight against evil spirits without any retreat and played an important role in it. Such abundant military force. Compared to a male servant, she would rather train Rob to be a protector of witches. Faced with possible dangers in reality, young witches would undoubtedly feel much more at ease if they had someone like this to protect them. Rob, come to my office after breakfast and talk. Cordelia said after making a decision. Rob nodded. Although he didn't know if he was willing, he thought it was not a bad thing. Really? Half an hour later, when Rob came out of Cordelia's office, his face was full of radiance. He has already got a new contract. Not a valet, but the head of security at Robichaux Academy for Distinguished Ladies. Just like the suit-clad bodyguards around Myrtle. Although he is the head of security, he is the only one he manages right now. But improved status and salary increases are always good things. Just like now, when passing by Spaulding, Rob greeted him with a half-master attitude. Hey, Spaulding, keep working hard and remember to close the doors and windows at night. After saying this, he left with a smile, ignoring the other person's long face. Chapter 29. For the next few days, everything was calm. The young witches are taught by Cordelia and the elusive Fiona to control their abilities more effectively. Rob, who is no longer busy with housework, can exercise or play with Zoe and Madison. Of course, he did not forget to search for more supernatural events on the internet. However, after completing Heather's shelter target and inadvertently taking in Madison, the 20-day buffer time made him less anxious than before. Unfortunately, no shelter points can be obtained under special containment, which makes Rob's plan to increase points impossible to carry out. It would be great if there was a reliable channel for supernatural news. Rob looked at various supernatural forums on the internet. There were all kinds of supernatural rumors in them, but with his own experience, he knew how deceptive the truth was. After all, if a supernatural event really happens, how many people can escape? Dead people don't post. Just as Rob was thinking about other ways to contact the supernatural, there was a sudden noise outside the house. As the new security director, he had the responsibility to protect the safety of the academy, so he immediately stood up and walked towards the balcony. Coming to the balcony, Rob looked down and saw a truck loaded with household goods parked in front of the gate of a residential building that had been empty to the left of the college. Obviously, there was a new owner there. Looking at this scene, Rob felt vaguely familiar. It had been so long that he couldn't remember most of the details. But it doesn't matter. With my own participation, and the fact that there are many stories other than American horror in this world, everything has changed beyond recognition. Rob, who no longer cared about it, was about to go back when he saw Zoe, Madison, Queenie, and Nan walking over. Did something happen outside? Zoe asked. Rob pointed casually and said, "We have new neighbors." Yet. The young witches became interested and walked to the railing to look down. They saw the neighbor's mistress's son, a young man, carrying goods with his upper body naked and a good figure. "He's so handsome," Nan said with shining eyes. "Delicious as cream," Queenie added figuratively. Zoe looked at the two girls and suggested with a smile, "Do you like that boy? You can go after him." Queenie was about to nod. Puff. Madison laughed out loud. Queenie immediately said angrily, "BCH, don't you think I don't know what you are thinking?" Hearing this, Madison spread his hands and said, "What did I say?" Seeing that this pair of people who disliked each other were about to confront each other again, Rob hurriedly stepped forward to stop them, thus preventing the situation from escalating. Queenie was in no mood to watch any further, so she went downstairs with a thump, apparently trying to turn her anger into appetite. Madison shrugged, gave Rob an innocent look, and left in boredom. In the past, she might have flirted with the handsome young neighbor. But now that there are people with better figures and better looks, naturally, I am not interested in losing sight of the main goal. Zoe glanced helplessly at her roommate's back, shook her head and said, "Don't be influenced by them." "Nan, do you want to meet the new neighbors?" "Of course." Nan said excitedly, "He's very nice. I like me very much, and he will like me too." "Really?" Zoe, who knew Nan's ability, looked at the boy below with some surprise, "Then go visit him as a neighbor." "Okay. Let me prepare the gift first." After saying that, Nan happily went downstairs to prepare. Zoe looked at Rob, "Want to join us?" "Forget it, go by yourselves." Rob showed no interest. Soon, Nan went to visit her neighbor with the cake she baked. Zoe, who was worried about Nan being alone, followed him. Rob and Madison, who stayed behind, were watching TV on the sofa in the living room. The screen was showing President Obama's speech. Delphi, who was preparing food for Queenie, passed by and accidentally saw this scene. She said with despair on her face, "Oh God! Have you abandoned this country that you were once proud of?" "What did you say?" Madison, who didn't know much about Delphi, asked in confusion. Rob explained, "It's just a normal reaction for an old antique who is out of touch with the times to have his worldview collapse after seeing a completely different new society." Then, he looked at Delphi and kindly reminded her, "Believe me, what you see now is only a small part of the changes in the new era. You need a stronger heart." Delphi left in a daze, and it was unknown whether she heard what Rob said. Madison stopped paying attention to Delphi. After reading some current affairs news and Hollywood gossip, she complained to Rob, "Student life is so boring day after day. There haven't been any activities or parties recently. Rob, why don't we find some time to go camping in the nearby swamp park? I miss those cute crocodiles." The two of them had just visited the attractions in downtown New Orleans not long ago, so Madison didn't mention them. "No problem. And bring Zoe, Queenie, and Nan along as well," Rob agreed. The 3-day road trip to witness all kinds of scenery made him feel a lot more wild. He was not as homebound as before, but instead became more like American youth. In addition, the endless swamp is inherently mysterious and has always been the source of urban legends and horror stories. "It would be even better if I could complete one of the shelter targets at will." "Zoe." Madison frowned. She had originally wanted to go over and talk to the two of them, but Rob showed up with a group of people. After thinking about it, she nodded in agreement. An hour later, Nan and Zoe returned safely. Without Madison, a woman who was obviously a vixen in the eyes of the parents, Nan and Zoe successfully completed the visit. Although the boy's stern and religious mother still left a deep impression on them. After hearing Rob's plan for camping, Zoe naturally wouldn't refuse. Nan, on the other hand, thought about it and shook his head, then said cheerfully, "I won't go. In the next period of time, I have to strike while the iron is hot with Luke to improve my relationship." Luke was the name of the neighbor boy. Hearing this, Madison was surprised and asked, "Improve the relationship? That guy named Luke accepted you?" "Of course." Nan said proudly, "He likes people like me. He has no interest in bold and hot girls like you." "Then he's not a man." Madison rolled her eyes speechlessly, then gave Rob a proud look. Rob didn't answer. In this way, including Queenie who had already agreed to come, there will be a total of 4 people participating in the camping. Without any delay, the date was set for tomorrow. Chapter 30. Rob drove to the city center to purchase camping necessities. Inside the academy, Nan sat alone in a corner, wearing headphones and looking at a teaching book on love skills with a silly smile on his face. Zoe, Madison, and Queenie were excitedly talking about how they were going to have fun tomorrow. Fiona suddenly appeared in front of them. "What are you talking about?" she asked with a smile after scanning the young faces of the witches. "We're talking about camping. Tomorrow will be a good day." Queenie replied nonchalantly. Fiona said with emotion, "It's a good choice. I remember that when I was young, I participated in various camping activities for a long time. Forests, mountains, islands, deserts, uninhabited areas, the beauty of nature is innumerable. Youth is really wonderful. Enjoy your youth and don't regret it when you are old." "Oh, yes." Just as she was about to turn around, Fiona paused, turned back, waved to Madison and said, "I didn't attend the welcoming party. Madison, come here and tell me how you and Rob solved the evil spirit. I am very interested in this matter." Madison's heart tightened. With the information Rob had told her about the Supreme Witch before, she now had a different understanding of Fiona's words and actions. Fortunately, she is an actress, so her acting skills are impeccable. No problem. Madison gave Fiona her most standard smile, and at her wave, she stood up and left with her. Zoe and Queenie didn't care and continued with the previous topic. 3 hours later, Rob, who came back with a lot of bags, heard from Zoe that Fiona had called Madison away. His face suddenly tightened and he asked quickly, "Where did they go?" "I don't know." Zoe said with some envy, "Fiona seems to like Madison very much." "Indeed, Madison's power is growing the fastest among us. Maybe Fiona thinks she is the next supreme witch. That's what makes it more dangerous." Rob frowned and took out his phone, about to send a message to Madison. Zoe, noticing Rob's expression, asked in confusion, "What's wrong? Is there something wrong?" "Nothing." Rob shook his head. "Just asking Madison if she needs anything else for the camping trip tomorrow." Rob sent a message, and although the content was not stated explicitly, Madison could understand it. Soon, Madison's reply came. "Everything is fine, nothing else is needed." "Don't you need it?" Rob breathed a sigh of relief. Since Madison said so, she must have a foolproof plan. Rob was relieved. Of course, to avoid any surprises, he would still send Madison a message every once in a while to make sure she was safe. And so it went on until late at night. The two witches, one big and one small, stayed in the bar for a long time and finally decided to go home. In order to avoid unnecessary accidents, Rob chose to wait. Feeling a little hungry, he went to the kitchen to find something to eat and found Queenie eating heartily there, while Delphi was kneading the dough with a helpless look on her face, supplying fresh food at any time. "Are you still asleep?" Rob greeted Queenie. "I'm a little hungry," Queenie said confidently. After that, she held out an untouched plate of pastries and shared, "Want some? It's still hot." "Certainly." Rob took the plate without hesitation and commented as he ate, "Too much sugar. It's too sweet." "Really? Why do I feel like it's okay?" Looking at the identical pastry in her hand, Queenie swallowed it in one gulp, and said in confusion after tasting it. Even so, she still called to Delphi, "Another plate, remember to put less sugar." Delphi, who was already impatient, kneaded the dough fiercely and complained even more, "Oh my god! What did I do wrong? Not only did I get one bottomless pit, but now there's another one. It's time to sleep, not eat. As a maid, you should obey your master's orders. At least Queenie didn't whip you, right?" Rob, who was glad that he had only been a butler for a day or two, teased Delphi. He had no good feelings towards this old woman who took pride in torture and killing and even imprisoned and abused her own daughter. No matter how you correct it, a pervert is still a pervert. "Indeed, thanks for the reminder, Rob." Queenie continued, "Hurry up and do it. Don't be lazy. I'll beat you up, you damn white supremacist. One is black, the other is yellow." Delphi muttered softly. When he was about to say something, his peripheral vision suddenly caught a glimpse of a dark shadow flashing past the window. "What just happened?" She was startled. "Queenie, what?" "Stop making excuses to be lazy. There's something outside the window." "Really?" Delphi moved carefully to the window and looked out. Queenie turned her head and looked out the window, and said impatiently, "There's nothing outside. Come back to work before I whip you, slave." "What's wrong?" Their conversation caught the attention of Rob, who was filling his stomach. As soon as he turned his head to look, Delphi suddenly let out a scream of terror and stepped back repeatedly. "No. Impossible. This can't be true." Delphi, trembling all over, said this fearfully while quickly locking the doors and windows. "What on earth are you doing?" Queenie stood up in confusion and was about to hold the nervous Delphi, but Rob said seriously, "There is something out there. Queenie. You two should close the doors and windows, and don't go out. I'm going to get the gun upstairs to get them. Wait for me." Time was running out, so after saying all this quickly, Rob ran upstairs quickly. Just when Delphi was frightened and stepped back, he did see a minotaur appear outside the window. Clearly this is not a normal guy. Rob ran back to his room as fast as he could, took out his pistol, and shouted the names of Cordelia, Zoe, and Nan. In order to avoid any danger below, he ran down again without waiting for the other party to respond. At this time, Delphi downstairs had tremblingly revealed her true identity, and the Minotaur was her former servant Bastion, also the former lover of the Voodoo Queen. She had installed the bull's head herself. Queenie glanced at Delphi speechlessly. She wanted to go out and meet the poor fellow in person, but when she thought of what Rob said, she did not go out. She picked up the sharp knife and fork, and looked around with a defensive look on her face. "How's it going?" In just over 10 seconds, even the witches upstairs had just been awakened when Rob ran back and was asking about the current situation. The loud slamming of the door told him everything. Chapter 31. He's coming! He's coming! Delphi screamed in terror. "Shut up!" Queenie yelled impatiently, "Go hide somewhere else first." "No. Just leave her here. Like she just said, the monster is coming for her. With the bait, it will be easier to hunt the prey." Rob pulled back Delphi, who was trying to escape, and said coldly. He didn't want to play hide-and-seek with a monster in the dark night, especially with unarmed girls like Nan and Zoe at home. Anyway, Delphi can't be killed no matter what, so it's perfect to use her as bait and meat shield. "No. No. Let me hide. That beast Bastion will tear me apart." Delphi tried desperately to struggle. Although she lived a long time, she only had the strength of an ordinary woman and could not break free from Rob's hand. Queenie saw it all, and although she usually cursed at him constantly, she still said kindly, "Let Delphi." Before she could finish her words, she stopped. Just at this moment, the violent sound of BG on the door suddenly stopped, and the entire first floor became eerily quiet. "He's coming! He's coming!" Delphi, who was used as a human shield by Rob, trembled. Behind Delphi, Rob, with the safety of his Glock on, was ready to shoot. "There he is!" A voice suddenly came from upstairs. It was Nan, who was closest to her. She pointed at a window with a look of horror on her face. Rob, who was well aware of Nan's abilities, pointed his gun in the direction Nan pointed without saying a word. "Really?" The next second, the sound of glass shattering was heard. Bastion, a minotaur with dark skin and extremely strong body, broke through the window and rushed towards his former mistress, Delphi, with murderous intent, breathing heavily like a bull. Bang! Flames came out of the muzzle. Rob shot without saying anything. The 9mm bullet hit the Minotaur's heart with great accuracy. However, this only made the opponent stagger a little, and after some smelly black blood flowed from the place where he was shot, he rushed forward again with a roar. "I hate monsters that can't be killed by being shot." While thinking about whether to buy a heavy machine gun to keep at home, Rob, who could tear the opponent's body apart even if he couldn't kill him, kept firing the Glock in his hand. Roaring, gunshots, screaming. This made the remaining witches upstairs, who were still confused, speed up their actions. "Shit! A voodoo-stitched monster!" Cordelia ran out in her pajamas, pulling Nan behind her, and recognized the Minotaur's identity at a glance. "Rob, help me stall for time." As Cordelia spoke, she quickly found a piece of chalk and began to draw a ritual circle on the ground. Of course. Looking back at Cordelia, who was acting reliably, Rob continued to shoot calmly. The Minotaur didn't stand there to get hit. Its speed was much faster than that of a normal person, and many of its bullets missed the target. Seeing that the bullets in the pistol magazine were used up and the Minotaur was getting closer and closer, Rob did not hesitate and pushed the Delphi in his hand over very cunningly. Bastion, who only had eyes for his old master, ignored Rob. He grabbed the terrified Delphi. Because of the old grudge and the entrustment from the Voodoo Queen Mary, he was about to torture the woman in his hand and take her back to let her continue to suffer the dark days in the coffin. Queenie then took action. She stabbed the knife into her arm. He was fine, but the Minotaur had a penetrating wound on his arm, and his hand collapsed when he was about to stretch it out. This is just the beginning. Queenie took the knife and slashed her neck again. In an instant, the Minotaur's throat was cut and black blood gushed out. "Well done, Queenie." Rob, who had just slipped away, rushed back again. While the Minotaur was covering his neck, he grabbed the other's horns with one hand and kicked the other's knee with one foot. With their combined strength, they tripped the other to the ground. Boom! The floor on the first floor suddenly shook. The Minotaur struggled to get up. Rob pressed on him tightly, shooting the Minotaur in the head with a knock with a new magazine, and shouted to the frightened Delphi, "If you don't want to encounter what happened just now again, come and help." Hearing this, Delphi didn't care that Rob had used her as a meat shield just now. She gritted her teeth and rushed over quickly. With a push of her 300-pound body, the Minotaur, who had just held up a lot, fell back again. At the same time, Cordelia, who had already prepared the ritual, also chanted the spell. Mysterious and powerful notes continued to sound in the room. Rob and the others didn't feel anything. The Minotaur, on the other hand, seemed to have suffered a severe blow and let out a painful beast cry. He wanted to escape from here, but was held down by Rob and Delphi. With the help of Queenie. Finally, after a sharp scream like that of a vengeful spirit, the Minotaur became silent. He's dead. Queenie, who had stabbed herself so many times but not a drop of blood came out, asked. Certainly. Rob nodded as he felt the Book of Containment being updated with a new page. Cordelia also confirmed at this time, his twisted and evil soul no longer exists. That's good. Queenie breathed a sigh of relief, threw away the knife in her hand, and sat down tiredly. Although she was not injured at all, it took a lot of mana to use the voodoo doll's abilities. Rob glanced at Queenie enviously. I have to say that the opponent's humanoid voodoo doll's abilities are really amazing, especially when it comes to humans, every strike is so accurate. It would be great if I could acquire this ability. Thinking of Madison in special containment, Rob looked at Queenie, and then he shuddered violently. No, I really can't eat it. Rob quickly stopped this dangerous thought. He stood up from the Minotaur's corpse and was about to say something to Cordelia when a high-frequency sharp vibration of buzz 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 suddenly sounded in the house. This is... Rob turned his head and saw Zoe taking out an electric saw from somewhere and running towards him aggressively. The previous noise also alarmed her. But she didn't scream like a normal girl. Knowing that she would only be a drag if she went up with her own abilities, she did not just sit there, but ran to the utility room, found the chainsaw she had seen before, and prepared to make a cameo appearance as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's a good idea, Zoe. Rob gave Zoe a thumbs up. When it comes to dealing with the Minotaur, the chainsaw in Zoe's hand, which is powerful enough to chop a person in half, is indeed more effective than his pistol. It's over. Zoe said blankly as she looked at the silence at the scene. You're late. Queenie waved at her. All right. Unable to tell whether she felt relief or regret, Zoe finally put down the chainsaw. Chapter 32. When Fiona and Madison returned to their residence in high heels and reeking of alcohol, they saw a strange scene consisting of broken glass, overturned furniture, minotaurs, chainsaws, black blood, ritual formations, etc. Am I dazzled? Or have I come to the wrong place? Madison rubbed his eyes, unable to believe what he saw. It looks like it's where we live. Fiona glanced at Cordelia's acquaintances, rubbed her forehead, and quickly sobered up and said, Who can tell me what happened while I was away? Fiona looked at Rob. Obviously he was impressed by this guy's ability to stir up trouble. Rob spread his hands helplessly, indicating that it was really not his fault. No need to look for anyone else, this is the trouble you caused. Cordelia stood up and said to her mother. Yes, that's you. Cordelia pointed at the Minotaur, this is the work of voodoo. You went to her and deliberately caused trouble. This is her revenge. Fiona narrowed her eyes and waved her hand. Snap. The Minotaur's neck was twisted like a knot, and then with a pull, his skin, flesh, trachea, and bones were broken. Black blood gushed out like a fountain, and the Minotaur's head flew towards Fiona's palm. Looking at this scene, Queenie silently put down the snacks in her hand. After catching the bull's head, Fiona carefully examined it without caring about the dirt on it. She sneered and said, It is indeed the work of that BCH. She actually sent this thing to attack the witch school. This is a provocation. It is a violation of the peace treaty. If you want to talk about provocation, it should be you who went to her and started the fire first. Cordelia, who had never suffered such an attack in the academy for decades, said in a bad mood. You know that very well. You went to her place, and why? This is my private matter, you don't need to know. Fiona sneered, Don't need to know? Let me guess, you went there to find those voodoo practitioners to cast a fertility spell for you. Mary's conception spell, haha. Do you do this because you think the voodoo people have higher magic power? Cordelia responded sharply, Perhaps I can verify it after my own experience. But thanks to you, she rejected my request. So it's all my fault. Certainly. I went there to demonstrate to my enemies. And your actions are to bring shame to the witches of Salem. Demonstration? Then what about the famous Madame Delphi Lalaurie? Cordelia pointed at Delphi. Prior to this, she had learned Delphi's true identity from Queenie. Fiona was silent. She glanced at the young witches around her, took a deep breath, and said to Cordelia, the quarrel between mother and daughter should be settled in private. Spalding, clean up here. After saying that, she still held the bull's head in her hand, waved to Delphi, and took her to Cordelia's office. A family ethics drama between mother and daughter has come to a temporary end. Rob looked at their backs, with a look of lingering regret in his eyes. Compared to the young witches who only had a vague understanding of the whole matter, he knew the whole story clearly. To put it bluntly, after discovering Delphi's immortality, the yearning Fiona ran to the voodoo Queen Mary, hoping to become immortal like Delphi. Unfortunately, they had a disagreement and a conflict arose between them. Mary learned from the incident that the Delphi she had buried underground had been dug out, and coupled with Fiona's provocation, she thought of what happened today. Not only warned the witches, but also brought Delphi back. It's a pity that the Minotaur was defeated. Even the soul was swallowed up by the Book of Shelter. Rob knew that there would be a lot of trouble between the two witch groups in the future, looking at the young witches and asked, so, will the camping activity continue tomorrow? Of course continue. Isn't everything resolved? Madison, who had sobered up a lot from his drunken state, said in a matter-of-fact tone. Rob looked at Queenie. The latter stretched out his fat black hand towards the snacks but stopped. He nodded solemnly after hearing this, I need a change of environment to improve my appetite. Rob, remember to leave more space in the trunk for snacks. As for Zoe, well, it's so easy to guess that the other person has an expression that says I'll go if you go. Sure enough, no matter what kind of disaster it is, it cannot stop young Americans from going out and having fun. Rob nodded and followed the local customs. Then, the plan remains the same. After midnight. After tossing and turning for a long time, everyone, including Fiona and her daughter, were very tired and fell asleep one after another. Rob was about to take a rest, but a text message interrupted his thoughts. Soon, there was a slight knock on the door. Rob opened the door and Madison, wearing a sexy suspender nightgown, walked in quickly. Didn't Zoe find out? Rob asked worriedly. Madison smiled and said, don't worry, I used my new ability to make her sleep peacefully without her noticing. A new ability? Yet. Fiona taught me that. Do you want to try it? Madison showed a fox-like smile on her face. Without waiting for Rob's response, she pulled up her already short skirt and ordered in a commanding tone, help me. What? Before Rob could react, he suddenly became dazed, his body involuntarily dropped, and his head leaned forward. When he was about to touch the destination, he was shocked all over. Rob broke free from the control and regained his clarity of mind. He quickly stood up and glared at Madison angrily, this is not a funny joke. Madison smiled and blinked, it's not like this hasn't happened before. Can it be the same? One is active, the other is forced. Completely different meaning. Rob sternly warned that such behavior must not be repeated. After Madison assured him again and again, he revealed it and said, that was the new ability you awakened. Rob knew what this was. Mind control, one of the 7 formation abilities, can temporarily control a person's thoughts. Of course, if one possesses magical powers as powerful as Fiona's, combined with certain means, it is also possible to permanently change a person's cognition. This is undoubtedly a very powerful ability. Combined with mind control, fire control, shape-shifting, out-of-body experience, divination, and resurrection, these form the 7 most important formations of the Salem witches. The standard for becoming a supreme witch is to pass the test of 7 formations and master all 7 abilities. Madison now has 3. Then think about the future where she has mastered the other 6 abilities except divination. No wonder Fiona identified her as the next supreme witch. The qualifications are really outstanding. Well, I have a good vision too. Such soft wool can be stroked for a long time. Chapter 33. I learned it after Fiona taught me once. What do you think? Am I awesome? Madison said proudly. Indeed it is amazing. Rob nodded first, then frowned and said, so your talent has been exposed to Fiona. It's nothing. Madison waved her hand. Then, she suddenly smiled as if she remembered something and said, you don't know how complicated Fiona's expression was when she saw me successfully perform mind control in one try. Of course, with your reminder, I specifically mentioned that I had a heart murmur afterwards. I didn't expect that this disease that has troubled me since childhood would become my life-saving straw. But it's also a good thing to be able to receive private instruction from the Supreme Witch for free. Madison finally comforted herself. That's good. After hearing this, Rob breathed a sigh of relief. Fiona was naturally aware of the selection criteria for the Supreme Witch, and she probably wouldn't pay attention to Madison anymore. As for young witches like Zoe, Queenie, and Nan, they will probably attract more attention from Fiona. Troubles really come one after another. Rob sighed. Just then, a fascinating aroma wafted into my nose. Madison, dressed in sexy and cool clothes, came close to him, her eyes full of love and said, "Rob, you must have been waiting anxiously for my news today. I'm very happy. This is the first time someone cares about me so much. My terrible parents never did that. They just kept taking money from me. Next, let me repay you. Just relax and enjoy yourself." Rob originally wanted to say that it was too late and everyone was too tired, so they should go and have a rest, but he didn't expect Madison to have already taken action. He took a breath and had to stop speaking. It has happened, so let it be. I don't know if my body can handle it. I'm still too tired tonight and not in good shape. How about adding some more? Anyway, after taking in the Minotaurs, new shelter points will be added to the account. No. The shelter points are hard to come by, and they must be well planned so that every point is fully utilized. We can no longer add as casually as before. But Madison didn't know if she drank fake wine tonight. Rob had no choice but to resort to this desperate measure. Physique, 1.4 Physique, 1.5. No, 003 Name, Bastion Type, Bull-headed Stitched Monster Status, Contained Abilities, Strong, Suture Introduction. A poor male servant was seduced by his master's daughter, and was discovered by his master. He was abused and even had a bull's head sewn on. Although his lover, the Voodoo Queen, punished his master named Delphi Lalaurie, she could not save his life. In the end, she could only use voodoo to refine him into a stitched monster that was neither human nor ghost, and stayed with her forever. The Voodoo Queen has really strong taste. The next morning, after fighting most of the night, Rob had no energy to do anything else. He woke up and opened the updated Book of Containment and commented. Although the rest time was short, his 1.5 physique allowed him to recover quickly. After quickly reading the information about the new guest in the Book of Inclusion, Rob, refreshed, turned the page to his own. In the shelter point row, it has changed from the initial 0 to 50. Plus the 10 points consumed in physical exertion last night. Minotaur Bastion brought him a total of 60 shelter points. It is much less than the 100 points of Heather with the golden arm before. Rob shifted his gaze from the 50 shelter points that had not yet been assigned and looked at the ability column. Among them, in addition to mind control, the new ones that can be awakened by oneself include strength and mind control. Strong is one of Bastion's abilities. When awakened, it has a passive attribute that can increase physical strength by 0.5. It seems good, but you should know that awakening your second ability now costs 80 containment points. Rob discovered that the containment points spent on awakening his abilities were not based on the strength of his abilities, but on the number of abilities. It costs 50 points to awaken the first ability, 80 points for the second, and even more for the third and fourth. This makes me more cautious in choosing abilities in the future. An ability like Strength, which only requires 50 points to increase physical strength by 0.5, but requires 80 points to achieve the same effect, is naturally useless to Rob. Bastion has another ability, Suture. No matter how serious the injury is, you can recover quickly after simple or even rough sutures. Just like Heather's Evil Spirit ability, this ability only works on stitches. Rob can't learn. Madison gave him surprises time and time again. After last night's physical and mental interaction, Madison's newly awakened mind control also came to his own awakening menu. In addition to mind control, fire control and various other abilities that will be mastered in the future. It can be said that Madison supported herself on her own. Not only does it guarantee quantity, but the quality is also much higher than Strong and the like. Stretch such high quality wool was definitely the best thing Rob had ever done. He glanced at the sunken bed surface which was still warm, and thought that he would need to reward the other person with his body and mind. Putting away the Book of Shelter, Rob was not in a hurry to add points. As the more abilities he has, the more points he has to spend, so he has to think carefully about what to choose next. In addition, sometimes more abilities are not necessarily better, especially when one's own spirituality is low. Just like control fire, although he can now summon a ball of fire, it is far from covering the entire body of the female corpse like Fiona did, and the flame only exists for a very short time. The two basic attributes of spirituality and physical strength must not be ignored. You should think about how to distribute it specifically first. Well, situations like what happened yesterday cannot happen again. Of course, if you encounter an emergency, allocating points based on actual conditions is also a good choice. Dear Rob, it's time to go. I can't wait to see the alligators. Delphi. Is my snack ready? At this time, the girls' joyful voices were heard outside the door. Rob, remembering that he still had activities today, replied, immediately. Having said that, he set off quickly. A quarter of an hour later, Rob, with all his belongings ready, drove his Chevrolet and took the girls to the nearby swamp for vacation. At the second-floor window, after watching the car go away, Fiona looked back at the bullhead on the table and said with a smile, "It's time to return the favor to an old friend." Chapter 34. As one of the famous attractions in New Orleans, swamp wetlands are mostly distributed around it. Visitors can follow tour companies, take special boats, explore the swamp, and come into contact with a variety of natural scenery and wild animals such as crocodiles, seabirds, water snakes, turtles, eagles, etc. Of course, you can also travel by car. Rob and his group, who did not want to be with so many people, chose the latter option. It's just that they seem to overestimate their abilities. Does anyone know where we are now? Rob, who was driving, looked at the dense forests on both sides of the road and asked his companion. That's not something a driver should say, Madison sneered. She turned on her phone and looked at the screen, which showed no signal at all. She curled her lips and said, "No signal. By the way, Rob, where did you take us to? No Man's Land? Aren't we going to Lafitte National Park?" Queenie, who was eating snacks, said belatedly. Rob explained, "I saw a side road on the navigation that could get me to my destination faster, so I drove in here. It turns out that sometimes you really can't trust the navigation. Now it has lost itself. Let me look at the map." Seeing this, Zoe took out the prepared paper map and started searching on it. Rob also stopped the car at this time, and put his head in front of the map, noting his previous driving actions on it. Soon, Zoe said in confusion, "This road now doesn't seem to be marked on the map." "That's normal," Queenie said without surprise, "new maps are like this. Many remote roads are not drawn. If it were an old map from decades ago, it would definitely be more detailed. No one in my hometown has ever been stupid enough to buy a new map. I've learned that. There are many powder trading locations hidden in the old maps." Madison nodded thoughtfully. Queenie understood Madison's meaning in an instant and her face darkened, even though she was already very dark. "Shit! Can't you just stay quiet for half an hour?" Madison curled her lips and smiled brightly, "I have always been very quiet. I just received your revelation and was inspired to speak." Seeing this scene, Zoe, who was sitting in the front seat, slapped her forehead helplessly, stuffed the map into Rob's hand, got out of the car directly, came to Madison's side, opened the door and said, "Let's change positions." She didn't want to endure the confrontation between the two of them all the way. "No problem." Madison immediately made an okay gesture, stepped out with her two straight white legs under her denim shorts, and sat in Zoe's original seat in a few moments. Looking at Rob beside her, she blinked, took the map and casually shoved it in her hand, saying, "Keep driving, Rob. There's no weeds growing on this road yet, so there must be cars passing by frequently. You'll definitely meet people if you keep going. You finally made a good suggestion." Rob nodded to Madison, then looked to the back seat, and when he saw Zoe was already seated, he continued driving forward. A quarter of an hour later, a rusty road sign came into view. "Fort Collins? What place is this? Does anyone know where this is?" Looking at the words on the road sign, Rob asked everyone. Needless to say, Zoe had only been here for a few days like herself, so she naturally didn't know the whole story. Queenie shook his head, indicating that he should not be asked such geographical questions. Madison did say, "I do know someone named Collins. Susan Collins, the author of The Hunger Games. I even participated in the selection of the female lead for the movie adapted from her novel. Maybe she has something to do with this place. At the end, Madison smiled playfully. It's useless to say anything. As expected, Rob rolled his eyes, thinking that he could not be relied upon, stepped on the accelerator and accelerated forward. No matter what Fort Collins looks like, if the road sign is here, it won't be long before there are signs of human activity. Zoe was actually very interested in what Madison had just said. Just like any other girl, she was very curious about Hollywood and asked, "A movie actress audition? What is that like?" Madison shrugged. "What else can I do? Put on some nice clothes and show off in front of a bunch of old men, calling it a test of my acting skills?" Zoe asked innocently, "Isn't acting important?" Madison laughed, "Honey, if you go to any training class in Los Angeles, you'll find a lot of people whose acting skills are as good as those of Oscar winners. Casting based on acting skills is the biggest joke in Hollywood. So that's why your acting is so bad." Queenie interrupted suddenly. Madison turned around, deliberately looked at Queenie, and said with a perfect smile, "In Hollywood, a pretty face is indeed more important than acting skills. But you were still not selected, and now you are out of date." Queenie said the truth. Madison, who was already used to the outdated words, simply spread his hands and said, "I can't help it. Who made me not want to serve those old guys? My agent is even more anxious than me. He keeps giving me homework all day long. He's eager to join me in a mixed fight against the old guys." As an experienced driver, Madison is not shy about matters between men and women, but this must be done on the premise that she is happy both physically and mentally. "So, the death of your agent?" Zoe said with a look of disillusionment. Madison gave her a look of her own understanding. "Okay, ladies, we can stop talking about Hollywood now. Let's go to the gas station." Rob interrupted the girls' conversation at this point. After parking the car in the open space next to the gas station, the four of them got out. Madison, who had just put on a sun hat and sunglasses, frowned and looked at the old shop that seemed to be a dilapidated building. "This place is really shabby. I suspect there are spider webs everywhere and rats running around. You guys go ahead, I'll wait for you here." She stopped and said. Rob waved his hand, and took Zoe and Queenie past the wooden sign that read "No Gasoline," pushed the door open, and entered the store. "Welcome. There's no gasoline, so the refrigerator is useless and won't cool." The bald boss, who looked to be in his 50s and had a very friendly look, greeted them. "Hello, are there any maps for sale here? We are lost and were originally planning to go." Rob walked over and started talking to the boss. The latter was very enthusiastic. Not only did he take out a map, he also pointed out the location and said, "You guys are really far away. The road here is very difficult to walk on. If you turn back, it will probably take a long time to drive." While the two were talking, Queenie went to the shelf to pick out food. Zoe was strolling around the store. Until she saw a huge statue of a humanoid crocodile holding a sickle. Chapter 35. What's this? Zoe looked at the humanoid crocodile in front of her curiously and was about to touch it with her hand. A sudden voice behind her startled her. "Be careful, don't touch it if you don't want to be eaten by the alligator man." Zoe turned her head quickly and saw a thin old man smiling sinisterly at her. Zoe thought the other party was just trying to scare her, so she was in a good mood. She just frowned and asked, "Crocodile man? What is that? Is it like the legendary Bigfoot?" "Bigfoot? It's just a bunch of savages playing tricks on me." The old man said coldly, "The crocodile man is the real master of this swamp. All the crocodiles, including the dead ones, are his eyes and ears. Once you touch this crocodile skin, you will be sensed by the crocodile man. You should know that he likes to eat the flesh and blood of young people the most. I have heard many stories like this from my grandfather. The only difference is that the crocodile head is replaced by a pig's head, a rabbit's head, a sheep's head, etc." Queenie, who came over for no apparent reason, spoke nonchalantly, and even touched the real crocodile skin on the human-shaped crocodile statue. "I touched it. Where is the alligator man? I'd love to see him." The old man's face suddenly turned pale, and when he was about to start cursing, the bald man held him back, smiled apologetically to everyone and said, "Old John always likes to exaggerate reality. I told you so." Queenie looked as if she knew it. "But it's not untrue," the bald boss said, legend has it that there are indeed crocodile people. They ate all the people here. The people living here now are not real natives. Including you, boss. Rob walked over and asked with a smile. The bald boss answered seriously, including me, including old John, and including everyone in Fort Collins. Have you ever thought about moving away? After all, there's always a scary crocodile man around. Believe me, some things are scarier than death. Besides, the crocodile man has not appeared in these years, and we just treat it as a story. By the way, we can use this story to develop tourism and attract young people like you to come and play. Unfortunately, you have seen it, it is poorly done. The bald boss laughed at himself, then took out a flyer from the shelf nearby and handed it to Rob. Grimm's Haunted House, the legendary home of the Crocodile Man. It also records the story of how a man turned into a crocodile man. In the past, you had to pay an entrance fee, but now you can go and see it if you want. Seeing Rob and the other two looking at the flyer, he grinned and said, since you've taken the wrong road, you might as well go here and have a look. After all, it's the same everywhere you travel. There are swamps and crocodiles here as well. Haunted house? The crocodile man's hometown? Let's go and take a look. Queenie said expectantly. Ever since Madison had been constantly talking about how she fought against evil spirits and how powerful she was in front of her, Queenie, who didn't want to be outdone, also became interested in this aspect. Zoe was also eager to try. Looking at the expressions of the two girls, although he felt that the current situation was very similar to the plot in Hollywood movies where young people went on vacation in the wild and frequently committed suicide, Rob still nodded in agreement. It's not easy to get out and have fun, so if you take the wrong road, you can't spend most of your time rushing on the road. As for danger, Rob looked at the configuration around him and laughed. Boss, how do I get to the grimly haunted house? He nodded and asked. So the bald boss began to draw the route map enthusiastically. Outside the gas station, Madison, dressed in suspender shorts, a hat and sunglasses, raised her phone and waved it left and right. What a damn place! Why is the signal so weak? Madison, who originally wanted to post some pretty selfies on Facebook to comfort her few fans, put down her phone unhappily and said speechlessly. Beauty, are you alone? A horse-faced man with a toolbox on his back, sweating profusely, passed by and whistled at her, showing his yellow teeth and chatting her up. Madison glanced at the horse-faced man with disdain, and then she didn't even bother to reply and just played with her phone. Such low-quality human males are totally not her type. It's hot. The horse-faced man was unmoved and was about to get closer and closer when the door of the shop opened and the bald boss and Rob and his group came out. The horse-faced man paused, squeezed his lips regretfully, and left quickly. On the other side, after saying goodbye to the bald boss, Rob and his two companions reunited with Madison and returned to the car. Today's destination has been changed temporarily. Rob handed the flyer to Madison, the only one who didn't know. Let's go shopping here first and camp nearby. Grimly Haunted House. Looking at the big title on the flyer, Madison couldn't help but blink speechlessly as she thought of the time when she and Rob spent an afternoon visiting haunted attractions in New Orleans. She then looked down and saw that the flyer told a cliched love thriller story. The only bright spot is probably that the hero and heroine are biological siblings. The brother and sister of the Baoting family lived carefree in the depths of the swamp and reproduced their bloodline. Until one day, a legendary giant crocodile that was much larger than a normal crocodile attacked them and ate the sister and the baby in her belly. Grimly was furious. He ran to the depths of the swamp and fought a huge crocodile. He ate its flesh and blood raw, and also ate his sister's flesh and blood which had not been fully digested. Shit, this is disgusting. So, this is the story? The hero who ate raw crocodiles mutated into a crocodile man and became a horror legend who craves blood and a bride. Madison threw the flyer away in boredom. If such a common story is made into a Hollywood movie, it will definitely be a waste of money. I think it's quite attractive. Zoe said with a little lack of confidence. Madison turned around and said solemnly, trust me, Zoe. If you were a producer, you would lose everything. Zoe. Okay, Rob said, just treat it as a visit to a historical building. It won't take much time. The boss said there are still intact canoes nearby. We can use them to paddle into the swamp and have some fun. That's why we went out. Yay hooky. Hearing this, Madison had no objection. The four people in the car headed towards the grimly haunted house according to the route given by the boss. Inside the gas station, the bald boss who saw Rob and his group off was keeping track of today's bills. The horse-faced man who had flirted with Madison earlier walked in and asked with respect and expectation, "Dad, are those the new sacrifices?" The bald boss still looked kind and said, "They are very lucky." The horse-faced man was immediately delighted, "Indeed. This is their supreme honor. Then shall I go and call for help?" "Go ahead. Blood is blood. Blood is blood." Chapter 36. Following the simple route drawn by the bald boss, Rob drove to the vicinity of the grim-mildly haunted house. There is no road further in. Rob called the three young witches and followed the tattered signposts into the depths of the forest. A quarter of an hour later, a dilapidated thatched hut appeared in everyone's sight. "Is this the famous grimly haunted house? Would that crocodile man condescend to live here?" Madison said amusedly, fanning herself with her hands. Zoe and Queenie were a little disappointed. What they saw was very different from what they had imagined. "No wonder the tourism industry hasn't developed here," Rob commented. Since he was already here, he pushed the door open and walked in. Moment. Flutter, flutter, flutter. The bats were instantly awakened, rushed out of the house, and flew towards him at a rapid speed. Rob quickly stepped out of the way. In the following time, a large number of bats woke up from their slumber and flew out of the door like black clouds. Zoe and the other two girls standing behind Rob were so scared that they ran away quickly. "Wait until everything is calm." Rob called the three back and shrugged, "This is one of the characteristics of the haunted house." "Yeah, right." Among the three, only Zoe agreed reluctantly out of respect. "Let's go in and take a look. There shouldn't be any bats in there." Rob was the first to enter. It was grey inside. Broken and dirty furniture, plates covered with dust as thick as a finger, blackened and stiff dried meat, bat droppings and spider webs all over the floor. There's nothing special about it, just an old house that has been abandoned for a long time, and there is no trace of the so-called crocodile man. Rob and his four companions came out quickly. The people who hadn't expected there to be anything here were not disappointed. However, they were delighted to find a well-preserved wooden canoe while strolling in a nearby swamp. Obviously, this couldn't have been left behind by that grim. Thinking that the person was a local who stayed here, Rob and his other three were not polite. Not forgetting their travel plans, they boarded the canoe, paddled, and wandered around in the swamp. Unlike the swamp tourist routes that have long been developed by travel companies, Rob and his crew can better experience the true charm of the swamp in the completely undeveloped pristine area. Soon, Madison saw the crocodile she had been longing for. Following the direction the other party pointed, Rob saw half of a crocodile's head floating on the water, revealing its eyes, ears, and nostrils. Judging from its direction, it seemed to be paying attention to these uninvited guests. Madison was not satisfied just by looking at it. She was eager to try it out and asked, "Do you want to catch it and play with it?" Crocodiles are not to be messed with by normal people. But for a witch like Madison, it's just a toy that can be used at any time. "No." Zoe said quickly, "I don't want the boat to sink." The wooden boat below was already at its limit with 4 people on board. "Another alligator? Then everyone can only swim back." "I can't swim." Queenie also decisively rejected the idea. Madison could only let go with regret. In the following time, relying on his extraordinary physique, Rob paddled the wooden oar easily and led the girls to deeper places. What seems dangerous to others can be easily solved by them, so they can spend their time however they want. However, they did not know that under the dense aquatic plants somewhere, a crocodile head that was much larger than the ones they had seen before was slowly emerging from the water, and its bloodthirsty eyes were staring coldly at the laughter in front of it. It was already dusk. After wandering in the swamp for a long time during the day without encountering any accidents, Rob and his crew came back and drove to a good camping place, where they set up tents and prepared to spend the night. When traveling outdoors, it is common sense to stay out overnight. When it comes to setting up tents, Zoe, Madison, and even Queenie are much more skilled than Rob, a novice. Instead of going over to make things worse, he took out a paramuta knife from the trunk of the car and cut the weeds that were in the way near the camp. He also chopped some firewood to make a fire in the evening. It just so happens that this crescent-shaped, large, and heavy dagger in hand is very suitable for chopping trees. Rob accidentally discovered this knife yesterday when he was rummaging through the Academy's utility room. He didn't know which senior bought it, and he didn't know whether it was for camping or for chopping people. In line with the principle of not wasting anything, he brought it here. When Rob returned to the campsite with a large amount of wood, he found that 3 tents had been set up. One for Queenie, one for Madison, and one for himself and Zoe. It makes sense. Originally, Madison thought about destroying a tent and then joining Rob and Zoe's 2-person space. However, after a brief thought, he realized that if he did so, he would most likely sleep with Queenie and would have to endure her huge size and heavy snoring, so he finally gave up. However, in such a good environment, I would be unwilling not to leave some traces like the 3-day road trip. Madison's eyes quickly lit up. Night falls. As Madison watched, flames ignited directly on the woodpile, illuminating the surrounding area. Zoe, who saw this, was very envious and asked, "Madison, how did you do it?" "Talent." Madison raised her chin proudly. Every witch is born with one or more talents. As time goes by or with emotional stimulation, the power buried deep in the witch's blood will eventually awaken. Queenie hit the nail on the head, just like the last time you were almost killed by the evil spirit and were so scared that you peed your pants, you awakened your fire ability. That's not all. Madison raised her long eyebrows, and her eyes moved when she looked at Queenie. The next second, Queenie, who was eating snacks, paused, then took the initiative to hand the snacks in her hand to Madison. Looking at the greasy, fat hand stretched out in front of him, Madison smiled smugly and rejected it with disdain. "Thank you. You can eat it yourself." After saying that, she withdrew her gaze. Queenie regained consciousness instantly and said in disbelief, "Shit. What just happened?" Zoe was also surprised. She couldn't believe that Queenie would take the initiative to hand food to Madison. "Mind control. Fiona taught me once, and I learned it." Madison told the truth calmly, and took a piece of freshly grilled chicken wing from Rob. "You actually learned a new ability." Zoe's face was filled with shock, envy, and yearning. "Can you teach me how you did it?" She didn't want the last time her boyfriend was in danger and she was powerless to help to happen again, so she wanted to become stronger urgently. "No problem," Madison said generously. Looking at Zoe, who was looking expectant, and Queenie, who was listening attentively although her expression was not very good, she curled her lips, took out a box of beer, patted it and said, "Drink and talk." Chapter 37. Late at night. The crackling sounds of the campfire, the clinking of bottles, the gulping, laughter, and the chirping of insects and birds all around combined to paint a beautiful picture of outdoor camping. They said they were going to discuss witches' abilities, but as they drank cup after cup of wine, everyone, including Zoe, stopped being good students and started to enjoy their wonderful vacation. The box of beer I brought was visibly running out of beer. Zoe and Queenie were already drunk. Madison, the main force, was fine. For her, who has always been an alcoholic, this amount of alcohol only made her face red at best. She looked at Rob with fiery eyes. Although he didn't usually drink, Rob still remained sober at 1.5 physique. "That's perfect." Madison glanced at Zoe and Queenie, thinking about asking them to try harder. Queenie suddenly stood up at this time. "I'm going to the bathroom." After saying that, she staggered outside. Rob looked at Queenie, then at Zoe, whose head was already leaning on his shoulder, and wondered if the night would end here. Suddenly, something soft and very pleasant to the touch pressed against his back, and a tempting voice with a hint of alcohol rang in his ears. "It's nice to be here." "Depend on. Are you playing so extravagantly?" Rob, who knew who it was without having to guess, sighed that the old driver was the old driver. With the 2 girls in his arms, he was about to reject them righteously when his ears suddenly moved. The next second, Rob's eyes fixed and he turned his head to look ahead, into the depths of the dark forest beyond the campfire. "What's wrong?" As Madison said this, her 2 little hands painted with rose nail polish could not wait to split into 2 groups and occupy the key points. Rob quickly held them down. He said with a serious expression, "Wait, something seems wrong around here." His physique, which is much stronger than that of normal people, gives him good hearing. Just at that moment, he seemed to hear another sound of crushed dead branches and leaves in the other direction where Queenie left. At first Rob thought it was caused by a small animal passing by. But when he listened more carefully, he found something wrong. "It's too quiet." The dense forest before was filled with all kinds of rustling noises, and it was quite lively. But listening to it again now, it seems eerily quiet. Animals are very sensitive. If they behave like this, it is very likely that an uninvited guest has arrived, which they are very afraid of. Rob squeezed Madison's palm harder. Madison's eyes quickly regained clarity. In the previous fight against evil spirits, she and Rob had developed a lot of tacit understanding. She looked around casually and whispered, "Is there something going on?" Rob nodded. "Is there any way to sober him up? Regardless of whether there is real danger or not, Zoe must stay awake in this situation. Hangover pills, a must-have for Hollywood stars." Madison picked up the bag on the ground, took out a pill from the small medicine box, and without wasting time, directly controlled Zoe's mind and made her swallow the pill. The medicine I took effect quickly. Zoe touched her forehead and stood up from Rob's shoulder, and asked in confusion, "What's wrong with me?" Rob explained the current situation in a low voice. Zoe was startled, but with her boyfriend, Madison, who didn't look panicky, by her side, she quickly calmed herself down. Rob didn't delay any further. He looked worriedly in the direction where there had been no movement since Queenie left. In order to avoid any more trouble, he suddenly said loudly, "Come out, I've seen you." 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute. Like the gaping mouth of an abyss, there was not a single sound in the dark forest, waiting for its prey to arrive. Rob, who seemed to be performing a comedy show, did not stop and said, "Your footsteps just now have exposed you. Come out. My companions and I don't like such pranks. Come over and have a drink. These two ladies need a gentleman to accompany them." Snap! The next second after Rob finished speaking, the unmistakable sound of footsteps rang clearly in his ears. Perhaps he was tricked out by Rob, or perhaps because of the temptation of the last sentence, the lady's invitation, a dark shadow walked out of the dense forest. "Recently, there have been crocodiles attacking people at night. I am responsible for patrolling this area. I hope I did not disturb you. I heard that there are fine wines and beautiful women here. I wonder which lady can pour a glass of wine for a responsible person like me." Some familiar voices sounded in Madison's ears. She looked up and found that it was the horse-faced man who had tried to hit on her during the day. At this moment, the horse-faced man was wearing a stab-proof suit that was convenient for walking in the jungle, and was carrying a shotgun. He really looked like someone who was patrolling here. If you ignore his greedy eyes that were constantly scanning Madison, and by the way, looking at the fresh and innocent Zoe with surprise. The quality of the sacrifices this time is really great. Anyway, the great gods only need reproductive tools. I will ask for them after they complete their reproductive mission. The horse-faced man was delighted. Just as he was thinking about it, Rob suddenly asked, "Are you alone?" "Of course not only." The horse-faced man reacted and immediately shut up. He gripped the shotgun tightly and subconsciously looked at Rob. Bang! Gunshots rang out. Not the shotgun in his hand, but the Glock in Rob's hand. Thump! There was a sound of someone falling to the ground. Until the horse-faced man closed his eyes, he couldn't figure out why Rob suddenly shot him. How could he? How dare he? Of course Rob dared. He is not one of those mentally retarded young men in horror movies. Who the hell is patrolling the jungle so late at night? He was the first one who did not believe that the American people had such a spirit of craftsmanship. Besides, do you really think he doesn't know that it is common sense that crocodiles hunt mainly during the day and not at night? The combination of late at night, lurking nearby, holding a gun, being lustful, and lying, etc., has given Rob sufficient reason to shoot. The situation where a man has a gun but hesitates to make the final move and ends up being killed by the villain will never happen to him. As for the possibility of killing the wrong person, it's a mistake to kill someone. Just consider it as a small contribution to alleviating the population pressure on the earth. Rob killed the horse-faced man without any guilt or regret in his heart. Without any pause, he waved his hand and extinguished the campfire, and the camp instantly became dark. Next second. Bang! 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 Various gunshots rang out continuously, and wood chips kept flying where the campfire had been. FK. Exposed. That idiot Vincent can't even delay time. What a loser. Chase them. They're running away. Don't shoot. The woman must be alive. Chase. 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 In an instant, the originally quiet forest became extremely lively. Under the illumination of torches, faces of men, women, young and old emerged from the darkness, shouting their slogans in unison with great enthusiasm. Blood is blood. Blood is blood. Blood is blood. Chapter 38. The moment he killed the horse-faced man, Rob, who knew that the other man was not alone, extinguished the fire immediately, quickly pulled Zoe and Madison, and ran in the direction where Queenie had left before under the cover of darkness. We can't leave the other person alone in this dangerous place. Behind them, a group of people who were no longer hiding came chasing them with torches and guns, shouting slogans fanatically. It's really bad luck that I ended up in the lair of a cult. Rob looked back and saw the bald boss he had met at the gas station, old John, was among them, looking unlucky. Although I have heard that in this free land, there are many kinds of cults that breathe the breath of freedom. But in his original imagination, these people were similar to those pyramid schemes in China that defrauded old ladies and grandfathers of their money, or the cults that were rampant in South Korea and engaged in financial scams. But who would have thought that America is America? Even the cult reveals an unusual wild temperament. Judging from the other party's posture, it was obvious that they wanted to sacrifice them alive. Madison's attitude is pretty good. Perhaps it's because I've seen too many strange and bizarre sects in Hollywood. After all, Hollywood stars who have little education, are stupid, have a lot of money, are decadent, and are empty are quite easy to be fooled. She even had the interest to tease Zoe at this time. Zoe, now is the time for you to wake up. Rob needs your protection. Zoe really listened to it and looked eager to take action. Rob didn't expect his girlfriend to be so bold. He quickly held her down and glared at Madison fiercely, saying, "Are you looking for death? Facing dozens of guns, do you think you are King Kong? No matter how powerful a witch is, she is still a mortal. If she is hit by a bullet, she will fall to the ground. Otherwise, witches would have become the masters of the world long ago, instead of hiding from place to place for fear of being discovered. No matter how strong Madison is now, it is impossible for him to deal with dozens of people at once. Even Rob, who hasn't grown into Superman yet, can't do it. Naturally, you should apply oil on the soles of your feet first. After we find Queenie, create some distance between us and let these guys disperse. It won't be too late to turn around and attack them again." Rob didn't think about running away. He spent more than $20,000 on the car, and left it here after only driving it for a few days. The moon hangs high in the night sky, shining its light on the earth, covering the vegetation with a layer of bright moonlight, which is very beautiful. It's a pity that no one appreciates it. A hunting activity that has existed since the birth of mankind is going on in the dense forest. Guided by the moonlight, the torch-bearing Fort Collins cultists, led by the bald boss, closely pursued Rob and his group. Jonah, the bald boss, is actually very depressed. Originally, he wanted to defeat them one by one without harming the sacrifice, first taking down Queenie, and then dealing with the two women in the camp. Unexpectedly, not only did something go wrong with Queenie who had succeeded first, but Rob and his gang were so alert that they escaped first and shot Vincent dead with one shot. Are these people definitely students? Jonah was confused. Just thinking about the revelation God gave him, he desired the three women this time more than any previous sacrifice. Jonah, who had to complete this task, shouted with a ferocious look on his face, "Speed up! Speed up! Blood is blood! Blood is blood!" The group of cultists seemed to be given an injection of chicken blood and moved faster. Seeing the backs of Rob and his group in sight, Jonah shouted with a smile, "Everyone, it's not safe at night, don't run anymore. Come back, we will treat you warmly." Rob wasn't interested. Madison, on the other hand, turned around and sneered, "Entertainment? Become a sacrifice to that ugly pervert." Jonah's face was filled with anger. That is the great lord of the swamp, the incarnation of the gods in the world, the greatest miracle. As a sacrifice, you were chosen by him to give birth to his noble bloodline. It is your supreme honor. Madison was surprised and said, "Crocodile people can do that? This is the greatest discovery of the century." Zoe looked disgusted. She had originally thought that this group of people were going to sacrifice her and others, but she had never expected that their real purpose would be like this. Rob was also speechless. He didn't expect that the cult he encountered this time would be so bizarre. "Hold on tight." Rob invested 10 shelter points to bring his physical strength to 1.6. As his strength grew further, he simply picked up Zoe and Madison, who were running slowly, and ran forward at a faster pace. With her feet off the ground and her long hair flying in the wind, Zoe asked in surprise, "Rob, how come you are so powerful?" "Of course he's strong." Madison, who didn't have to run away, said excitedly, "His physique is getting stronger and stronger visibly. By the way, Rob, was your ancestor a behemoth? Did you awaken the power of your bloodline? Rob rolled his eyes. There are no behemoths in the Celestial Empire. Madison asked excitedly, what should that be? Dragon. Jonah, who had no idea that the prey had even had time to chat, couldn't help but get anxious when he saw Rob, who was leading two people alone, was getting faster and faster as if he had taken drugs. If he is like this, what about those believers? The prey was almost gone, and in their excitement, these people no longer obeyed the order not to shoot, and the sounds of long and short gunshots suddenly echoed in the dense forest. However, it was a big fuss, but had no effect at all. It was already dark ahead, with many trees, and Rob was moving very fast. It would be unreasonable if you could hit the target accurately when shooting from a long distance. The cooked duck was about to disappear from sight. Sudden. A huge black shadow with a thick tail flashed past them and chased after Rob and his group at an extremely fast speed. Watching this scene, it was as if they saw the Lord coming to the world. All the cultists, including Jonah, sang the obscure and strange hymn with great piety and enthusiasm at this moment, walking with God. We save her soul. Control her head and hands. It's her honor. We're going to give her a new lease of life. We will have a better life. We are still alive. It has always been His will. Great Lord. We'll control her torso, head, and limbs. How glorious we are. We will bring life to Him. We will always obey His will. Ahead. The cultists made such a big noise that Rob and his companions naturally heard it. What the hell are they yelling about? Madison asked puzzled. It seems to be a prayer poem to the evil god. Zoe, who had been to the church before, said uncertainly. Rob was about to speak. Sudden. His face changed. Careful. Chapter 39. The sharp claws slashed across the heads of Rob and the others like a poisonous snake spitting silk. If Rob hadn't reacted quickly and rolled on the ground with Zoe and Madison in his arms, the skulls of himself and others would have been blown off. When the three of them stood up again, a huge black shadow blocked their way. Rob frowned. Under the moonlight, a humanoid crocodile with a huge crocodile head, covered with scales and dragging a thick long tail was opening its bloody mouth full of sharp teeth towards them ferociously. So there really are crocodile people? Zoe said in a daze as she watched this scene. Where is its fog organ? This was what Madison paid attention to first. Noticing that the Book of Shelter in his mind was emitting a scarlet light, Rob showed no joy when he knew that new goods had arrived. There are dozens of guns behind. He quickly said, Madison, mind control. No. Madison immediately looked at the alligator man. In an instant, the crocodile man, whose cognition was briefly tampered with and who just wanted to stand there stupidly, paused. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Rob pulled out the Glock and shot the crocodile man in the head. Bang! The scales broke and dark green blood flowed out. One good news, one bad news. The good news is that judging from the performance of the crocodile man, bullets are a threat to him, unlike the previous evil spirits and minotaurs who completely ignored hot weapons. The bad news is that the crocodile man broke free from the mind control in advance and raised his arm in time to take the bullet instead of his head. Its mental resistance ability is much stronger than that of a normal person. Madison frowned and explained quickly. Come again. Control it for 1 second if you can. Rob is about to use the same old trick to continue to work with Madison. The crocodile man looked at them fearfully, then disappeared into the darkness in a flash. The previous confrontation scared it. But it didn't go far. Realizing that the sacrifices this time were unusual and that it was in great danger facing them alone, it lingered near Rob and the others for the next period of time, constantly harassing them so that the believers behind could catch up and capture it together. Sly beast! Although he knew what the crocodile man was thinking, Rob was unable to do anything about it for a while because he was in the opponent's home court and visibility was low. Fortunately, after running such a long distance, although the cultists behind were chasing them, they had been dispersed a lot due to their physical strength and were dragged into a long queue. Now you won't be facing dozens of guns at once. It's time to kill them. Rob knew that continuing to flee in the wilderness without any supplies would lead to bad consequences, so he stopped and prepared to defeat the cultists one by one while they were in disarray. It should have been done a long time ago. Madison smiled grimly, turned around, and hooked his finger at the cultist who was closest to him and was shouting excitedly. Moment. As the cultist looked confused and terrified, he flew towards her uncontrollably. Devil, Devil! Looking at the stunningly beautiful Madison in front of him, the previously fanatical cultist said with a pale face and trembling. It's funny that cultists actually accuse others of being devils. Madison waved her hand. Snap! The man in front of him turned his neck 360 degrees, and he was deader than dead. Can you use a gun? Madison took the shotgun from the corpse's hand without changing his expression and handed it to Zoe. Certainly. Zoe glanced at the man who died in a horrible way, then skillfully fiddled with the shotgun. Although she looks weak on the surface, she is also capable of playing human body puzzles in the morgue. Kill or be killed, it is a matter of no hesitation. Rob and the young witches begin to fight back. Faced with the harassment of bullets, telekinesis, fire, and mind control, the fastest cultists were easily killed without even a sound. Before the people behind could react, Rob and his two companions had already rushed over, and quickly submerged the former as he looked ignorant, as if the fish had taken the bait. Before long, some of the fish that escaped the net finally shouted in horror, "Witches! They are witches with devil powers!" You guessed right. Madison looked at the person who had spoken. The latter's face changed and he hurriedly dropped his shotgun, holding down his neck with both hands, which suddenly moved, to prevent it from twisting backwards. But it didn't work. With a click. A moment later, his cervical vertebrae were broken and he died beyond demise. But there is one thing you said that is wrong. A witch is a witch, but there is nothing devilish about her. Now, let you feel the wrath of the witch, you rubbish. The constant killings made Madison's heart, which was originally suppressed by social rules and regulations, become violent and arrogant. I just saw her eyes sweeping forward. Moment. The raging flames turned into a long fire dragon that burned violently in front and spread rapidly. That's not all. Zoe on the side seemed to be stimulated and inspired by Madison. Her eyes moved, and the same flame was summoned by her. Under the joint spell of the two witches, screams came out from the mouths of the cultists who were unable to dodge. Their whole bodies were set on fire and turned into torches. No matter how frantically they struggled, it was in vain. In the end, they turned into balls of charcoal and fell to the ground. The other cultists who were farther away and had managed to escape this disaster looked at the sea of fire in front of them and their companions who were wailing in pain in the fire with great fear. Old John, who had once explained the legend of the crocodile man to Zoe at the gas station, looked at the flames rising into the sky and said in a daze, "Oh my God! What kind of enemy have we provoked?" It was like a bucket of cold water was poured down. No one expected that they would meet the legendary witch this time. And it's so strong. Although there were still quite a few people, they were already terrified and no longer had the passion they had before, and they were already thinking of running away. Roar! Suddenly, a deafening roar sounded. The cultists' faces suddenly changed, and they stopped short of retreating. God is angry. God is rebuking us for our cowardice. Jonah, the gas station owner and leader of this cult group, shouted angrily, "Where is your loyalty to God? Do you want to go against God's will?" Everyone shook their heads in panic. Jonah shouted loudly, "Don't retreat. Raise your guns. For God. For our bright future. Capture those witches. They will be the best sacrifice. Blood is blood. Blood is blood." Years of faith eventually overwhelmed fear. While praying loudly, the remaining cultists, with resolute faces, launched another attack under the leadership of Jonah. At the same time, the crocodile man who gave orders to the believers also took action. Chapter 40. The crocodile man originally wanted to wait for his followers to take the sacrifice in one fell swoop, and then come out to clean up the mess himself. Unexpectedly, the group of people that it had placed high hopes on almost collapsed first. There was no other way. After stabilizing the situation, it had to take action to prevent the sacrifice from escaping. After he mutated into a crocodile man, as time went by, the sanity of the man named Grimly Boding quickly dissipated, and was replaced by an endless desire for flesh and blood and reproduction. Flesh and blood are the desire of the big crocodile itself, reproduction is its last remaining human desire. The pain of the death of its unborn child and the desire to pass on its bloodline made it eager to give birth to its own offspring even after it transformed into a crocodile man. However, none of the female sacrifices captured in the past were able to successfully conceive their own offspring. But this time it's different. This time, the female sacrifice possesses a mysterious power that scares it yet makes it addicted. This power contained in their bodies can definitely enable them to shoulder the responsibility of reproduction and even make their offspring stronger. Therefore, we must never let it leave. The crocodile man took action. In the dense woodland, its movements were not affected at all. It quickly bypassed the witch's sight, and with a sudden kick of its scaly sturdy legs, it pounced on the unsuspecting witches at lightning speed. A dark shadow rushed from the slope and knocked it to the ground. "I've been waiting for you." With his body pressed against the crocodile man, Rob drew out his Palin dagger and slashed at him fiercely with the broad and sharp blade. In the previous counterattack, when Madison and even Zoe were showing their prowess, Rob, except for occasionally firing a few shots, spent most of the time guarding against the crocodile man hiding in the dark. Although these young witches are powerful, they are just weaklings once the enemy gets close to them. After all, a witch's physical fitness is comparable to that of an ordinary person. In addition, the teaching in witch schools, which has been peaceful for a long time, is to let girls control their abilities instead of training them to become killers, dark wizards, etc. If they really had to face a life and death battle face to face, instead of being at a certain distance like this and having the ability to release their abilities behind cover, their performance would not be much better than that of ordinary people. Swish! The short knife whizzed down, reflecting the bright light under the moonlight. The crocodile man quickly raised his hands to block. Click! Scales shattered, green blood splattered, and the sharp blade sank deep into the flesh. "Is that all you are?" Rob grinned. "As long as the enemy can be destroyed on a physical level, it's not a problem." Stamina, 1.6 stamina, 1.8 at this point. Rob, who naturally would not be stingy with the investment in the collection point, held the hilt of the knife tightly in his hand. The Palin knife, which can easily chop down large trees, carries more power and is about to cut off the crocodile man's arm in one fell swoop. A sharp sound of breaking through the air suddenly came from behind. Rob frowned and rolled over immediately. The next second, a thick crocodile tail swept past where he was and hit the tree next to him. In an instant, there was a loud boom and a big hole appeared in the tree. The tree trembled and soon fell to the ground under the weight. Roar! The crocodile man quickly stood up, opened his 10 fingers like hooks, and pounced towards Rob with a surging wind and great anger. Rob snorted coldly, replaced his left hand with a knock, and fired several shots at the opponent. By the time the crocodile man was forced to stop and dodge, Rob, who had put away his gun, had already approached him, wielding a heavy dagger and slashing at the opponent repeatedly. Although he has never learned any sword skills. But when it comes to killing people, all it takes is speed, accuracy, and ruthlessness. With his extraordinary physique, he did a great job in this regard. "Hey! Rob, get out of the way!" Seeing Rob and the crocodile man fighting fiercely, Madison and Zoe, who were not blind, also turned their eyes. They originally wanted to help, but they found that the man and the beast were moving too fast, and they were entangled together, so they couldn't find the right time to take action, which led to Madison's shouting. "Is this something that can be waived?" Rob took the time to reply. Believe it or not, as soon as he pulled away, the crocodile man ran away. "I really thought the other party was those stupid cultists at the beginning." With the lesson learned from the initial mind control, the crocodile man would no longer stand there stupidly. In addition, with the speed that only he could keep up with, it was no longer so easy for the witches to aim at the other party's spell-casting ability. Not to mention the crocodile people, the cultists who are still alive have learned their lesson and are no longer exposed to the witches' sight like before, which has also led to the witches' increasingly less successful results. The gunshots were getting closer. One even ricocheted and narrowly missed Rob's feet. He was startled and said quickly, "You guys focus on dealing with those cultists. I'll take care of this ugly guy." Madison and Zoe did so. The crocodile man, as the enemy, was unwilling to do so. Its fundamental purpose is to be a witch who can give birth to offspring for it, not Rob. Realizing that Rob was not so easy to kill, it found the right moment, swung its tail, and while Rob was dodging, it took the opportunity to distance itself and ran towards the witches. A strong hand grabbed its tail in time. How can a beast be better than a human when it comes to scheming? As Rob smiled coldly, a sharp knife flashed and half of the crocodile's tail fell to the ground. Roar! The crocodile man suddenly let out a long howl of extreme pain. In anger, it no longer cared about the witch. It turned around, stood up with its 2-meter-tall body, and rushed towards Rob ferociously. Rob, who was well prepared, quickly turned his body when the other party approached, and then pushed the crocodile man hard. In an instant, the crocodile man, who couldn't stop himself, missed his step while running forward. It turned out that there was a hillside behind Rob. It couldn't help but fall down. But before that, it deliberately swung most of its tail. Rob, who failed to dodge completely, stumbled and fell down. In an instant, the man and the beast fell rapidly, hitting a large number of bushes and branches along the way. When all the noise was over, the thick-skinned crocodile man was the first to get up from the ground. Not far away, Rob, who was lucky enough to be fine except for choking on a mouthful of mud, quickly stood up, grabbed the dagger that fell on the ground, and with a clang, blocked the incoming sharp claws. Bang! 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 Rob's free left hand drew the knock again and fired. Seeing this, the crocodile man, who had been on guard, dodged to the side. Although if it is really hit by these shots it will not die. But little by little it adds up. It's okay to fight with others while dragging your injured body. It would be unwise to face this incredibly powerful human being in front of him. And this is exactly what Rob wanted. Chapter 41. Just as the crocodile man dodged to the side, Rob simply threw away the pistol, stepped forward with his right foot, twisted his waist, and swung out his left arm holding the dagger. Squeak! The blade cut through the air, causing a sharp whistling sound. Under the crocodile man's astonished gaze, the knife flashed like a crescent moon, with a graceful arc, and slashed towards its chest with incredible speed, where it could not dodge in time. That's not all. Just as it felt a stinging pain in its body, it suddenly discovered that the knife light had turned into a fiery red. Control the flame! Rob's eyes flashed with fire. The ability that had not been used during the battle finally erupted at this moment. In an instant, a ball of wild flames wrapped around the blade. As the blade cut through the crocodile man's scales and pierced into his flesh, the burning flames turned into wisps of fire snakes and rushed into the crocodile man's body. In an instant, a scream much more painful than before came out of the crocodile's mouth again, and then it started flapping around in all directions like a madman, extremely manic. Rob drew his sword and stepped back. It can be seen that in addition to a long knife wound on the crocodile man's chest, the inside is completely black after being burned by the raging fire. The effect is good, it's worth it that I have been hiding until now. Rob smiled. If he had released the fire earlier, with his meager spiritual power, he could at most burn the crocodile man slightly, instead of burning his insides like he was doing now. Fortunately, the crocodile man has a strong physique. If it were anyone else, they would have been killed by Rob's vicious knife. The crocodile man's rage at this moment is only temporary. Soon, it stopped panting and looked very weak. Rob raised his dagger. Go on. There was a flash of silver light, and the blade attacked again. The crocodile man's pupils shrank and he stared at the dagger. Although there was no flame coming out of the opponent now, he still did not dare to be careless and fought against it carefully. However, one has a physique upgraded to 1.8, and the other has a severely damaged body. Not long after, Rob slimmed down the crocodile man's tail again and kicked him, sending the opponent crashing to the ground. It's time. Rob gripped the hilt with both hands and stabbed downward with all his might. Tear it up! Green blood is flowing. While the crocodile man held the blade tightly with his huge hands, he exerted his last bit of strength with murderous eyes. The bloody mouth that could swallow half of the body in one bite suddenly expanded to its maximum, revealing fangs that were much denser and sharper than those of a normal crocodile, and it bit towards Rob's head that was so close at hand like a rabbit. Rob was not panicked at all, and even said that he had planned this scene in advance. Spiritual, 0.3 spiritual, 0.5 your breath stinks. Let me brush your teeth. Rob fixed his eyes on the crocodile man's bloody mouth. Boom! With the infusion of all his spiritual power, a flame much more violent than before instantly appeared in the crocodile man's mouth. The crocodile man suddenly froze, and then his whole body began to tremble violently. Soon, it stopped. Following the sound of a thump falling to the ground, there was no more movement. It's over. Rob let go of the dagger that was still tightly grasped by the alligator man. The plan went very smoothly. To prevent any further complications, Zoe needs to rescue Madison as soon as possible. In the previous confrontation, he deliberately used the dagger as bait to restrain the crocodile man's hands, forcing the opponent to use his only weapon, the crocodile's big mouth, in a desperate fight. The ability to control fire, passed down to the witches of Salem, is marked by the eyes. At such a close distance, The crocodile man opened his mouth, exposing his greatest weakness and naturally seeking death. A ray of light emerged from the crocodile man and was cast into the Book of Containment, showing that it was deader than dead. The pages of the book turn and a new page appears. No. 004 name, grimly boding type, mutated alligator man status, contained ability, alligator transformation, control of alligators introduction, in order to avenge his wife, sister and unborn child, a man who ate the flesh and blood of the legendary giant crocodile alive mutated into a crocodile man due to extreme anger and bloodthirstiness. He replaced the giant crocodile and became a new horror legend in the swamp. The new containment was completed, which meant Rob had 10 more days of leisure. That's not all, the crocodile man unexpectedly gave him 150 shelter points. There are many more than Heather and the Minotaurs before. I don't feel that the crocodile man is stronger than Heather and the Minotaur. If the shelter doesn't look at strength, then what does it look at? The extent of the evil deeds? In this regard, the crocodile man is indeed the winner. The only people who died at Heather's hands were the grave robbers and a few brave young men in the town. The Minotaur Bastion mostly serves as a comfort tool for the Voodoo Queen. The crocodile man has existed for a long time, and has had a constant stream of sacrifices from his subordinates. In all, it has the most blood on its hands. If you compare it this way, it does make sense. Of course, we cannot be arbitrary. Maybe it has something to do with strength, crime, and other things. There is still too little material. Rob shook his head. The crisis had not yet been resolved and he had no time to think about it. In addition, there is no need to be stingy with the shelter points. The right way is to turn them into immediate combat power to solve the remaining problems. Rob looked at the ability. He can learn both of the crocodile man's skills. However, crocodile transformation will turn you into something that is neither human nor ghost, and you can't change back, so just pass. Control crocodile is also useless, it just makes the crocodile obey you. It is far from being as good as the crocodile man named Old John at the gas station who could sense everything about all the crocodiles. No matter how strong a crocodile is, it cannot withstand a single bullet unless it fights underwater. Of course, if this ability were given to the professional swamp hunters who are very famous in New Orleans, they would definitely make a lot of money. Finally, Rob's gaze lingered on mind control and mind control. Considering that we will be dealing with a lot of gunmen next, and it does not overlap with killing skills such as control fire. He chose mind control. 80 points were crossed out, and under the influence of the Book of Containment, mind control was quickly under his control. Rob looked at the remaining points again. The previous shelter points had been used up during the fight with the crocodile man, and there were only 70 points left. Awakening the third ability costs 120 points, so let's not consider it for now. Rob allocated all the remaining points to physical strength and spiritual strength. Physique 1.8 Physique 2.0 When we get here, the progress suddenly stops. Rob discovers he has an unexpected new power. Health, with a physical fitness of 2.0, you are immune to most diseases. Very good ability. Although there was no obvious improvement in his combat capability, Rob, who once suffered a serious illness and was bedridden for a week, knew the value of health. I think many people can relate to this. Chapter 42. Freeloading makes people happy. Especially when the ability to get something for free is very good, the joy is doubled. Afterwards, Rob tried to continue adding points to physique, but was reminded that after the attribute reaches 2.0, every 0.1 increase in the attribute will cost double the cost, that is, 20 shelter points. He paused and turned to invest the remaining containment points into spirituality. In this case, the personal information is updated as follows: No. 000 name, Rob type, human physique, 2.0 spiritual, 1.0 abilities, fire control, mind control, health introduce. Feeling a stronger force than ever before, Rob retrieved his pistol and dagger, cut off the crocodile man's head and tied it around his waist, then climbed up the hillside. It's time to return for help. Crackling in the dark night, raging flames raged through the dense forest. As time went by, a vast sea of fire was formed, with flames shooting up into the sky, illuminating the night sky red. Fortunately, this is a swamp wetland with plenty of water, and coupled with terrain restrictions, it does not cause a major fire. Even so, it caused great trouble to Jonah and other cultists who were hunting them. Although Madison and Zoe had the upper hand at the beginning and achieved great results. But as their own magic power gradually dried up and they were brainwashed again, even though half of the cultists were killed, there were still many who were no longer as arrogant as before. They moved cautiously between the trees, firing cold shots and closing in on the enemy with an encirclement. The situation was gradually turning around. If it weren't for the sea of fire in front of them, the battle might have ended faster. Never underestimate the power of technology. No matter how powerful your magic is, a bullet that cannot be seen by the naked eye can take your life. Otherwise, ordinary people like witch hunters would not have been tirelessly hunting witches for hundreds of years, instead of being wiped out by them. Compared to the witches of the Dark Ages, Madison and Zoe are undoubtedly immature. In contrast, the cultists before them were not as professional as the witch hunters. Although they are extremely pious to the crocodile people, it does not mean that everyone is brave, fearless, and self-sacrificing. Just like a young man named Mike, who did not run away despite the crocodile man's roar and Jonah's call. But after witnessing his acquaintances being hit by bullets, burned by fire, or having their necks broken, he still hid at the end of the team. Occasionally, he would follow the crowd and fire a shot forward, then immediately shrink behind a big tree, praying not to be seen by the witch's devilish eyes. But he was guarding against the front and not paying attention to the back. Click! The sound of footsteps on fallen leaves could be heard behind me. Mike thought it was a companion coming over and turned around to ask without paying any attention. Sudden! His eyes froze, his hands moved, he pointed the muzzle of the double-barreled shotgun at his chin and pulled the trigger. After a bang, the head shattered like a watermelon falling to the ground. This one was successful. Rob walked out from the darkness, ready to finish off the enemy at any time, and said lightly. He was testing his mind control abilities. Mike was not the first, but he was the only one who successfully committed suicide under his influence. The so-called mind control does not mean permanently changing a person's mind. With Rob's ability, the most he could do was affect the recipient for 1 or 2 seconds. In addition, the will of the recipient and the things implanted in the recipient's mind and asked him to do will also affect the duration of mind control. For example, when Madison asked him to lick her, he quickly broke free after being licked. Just like the other experimenters just now, Rob asked them to shoot themselves. Except for Mike, who had been hiding in the back and was obviously frightened, everyone else refused at the last moment and woke up early. Under the stimulation of death, even if Rob instilled in them the idea that nothing would happen after shooting, they would question and resist this idea that went too far against common sense, forcing Rob to finish off the enemy in order to avoid alerting them. Rob was not disappointed. After all, sometimes taking a detour can be just as effective. With a 2.0 physique, he moved among the trees like a ghost. He soon discovered 2 more cultists. Aim at a person and initiate mind control. In an instant, when the cultist who was the target looked at his companion, he suddenly found that the other party had turned into a witch. He was so frightened that he adjusted the muzzle of the gun without thinking and shot at the other party. The next second, he looked dazed, and when he looked again, the witch was no longer there, replaced by his companion lying in a pool of blood. "Oh my God! What's going on?" he said in disbelief. "Go to hell and ask your God." "Oh, I almost forgot, it got swallowed by my book." Rob walked out of the darkness and killed the opponent with 1 knife. He rubbed his brows, having contributed to the Earth's population crisis. Although his spirituality had improved a lot, it was still not enough after several consumptions. I really envy the Supreme Witch's mana. Speaking of the Supreme Witch fake, I don't know if I can inherit her qualifications. Fiona's delicately made up but old face flashed through Rob's mind. Don't be too perverted. She can be your grandmother now. Rob shook his head and looked at the remaining cultists. It was time to end the battle quickly. It's not like a humanoid Gundam fighting alone against many enemies. But... hey! Your great god has come to comfort you, come and see. Rob shouted loudly as he threw the crocodile head that he had specially cut off and brought with him into the crowd of cultists. The cultists who heard the noise looked over subconsciously. Then, they saw the crocodile man's huge head, which appeared particularly clear under the reflection of the sea of fire. Thump! The crocodile man's head fell from the air and landed right at the feet of Jonah, the leader of the cult. The latter stared at it blankly, his mind went blank, and his usually eloquent mouth couldn't utter a single word. Until someone shouted in horror, "God is dead!" It was as if the dam had been pulled. The faith of all the cultists collapsed rapidly at this moment. How can God die? God cannot die. Impossible. Impossible. This must be an illusion. A witch's trick. Where is God? Why hasn't he shown up in such a long time? God is really dead. Disbelief, doubt, pain, despair, confusion, panic, etc. permeate the hearts of all cultists. God is dead, and no one has the courage to continue fighting the enemy who killed God. When the first cultist turned back and ran away in panic. After just a moment's hesitation, the second and third people quickly followed. Soon, it turned into a massive rout for everyone. This even includes the cult leader. Jonah. Chapter 43. Everything has its limits. Faith can bring people infinite courage. However, if it collapses, it will be an unprecedented disaster. Just like now. After the crocodile man's head was brought in and performed a great service. In the following time, Rob no longer needed to hide himself. He chased after the defeated cultists and easily harvested one life after another. No one turned back to resist. Even if they have guns, even if they outnumber them. Those who were caught up by Rob and could not escape could only cry and beg for their lives, completely lacking the courage they had in the past to fight against the crowd alone. Rob finally understood why, throughout history, the greatest casualties in a war often occurred when one side was defeated. He showed no mercy. Over the years, every cultist whose hands have been stained with blood deserves to die. As for handing it over to the police? Forget it. Not to mention how long the lawsuit will take, would it expose the fact that they are wizards? Therefore, let me, the loving father of the American people, personally uphold justice. He shot the man in front of him in the head. When Rob looked forward, he saw a bald head shining in the moonlight. Rob greeted happily, "Boss, don't be in a hurry to leave. Thank you for guiding us to such a surprising and adventurous place." The bald boss, Jonah, trembled all over. No longer as friendly as before, he didn't even dare to respond and just ran forward desperately. "But, I heard footsteps getting closer behind me." He finally couldn't help but look back and shouted in horror, "Devil!" The other side. When they found that the enemy was in chaos and began to flee, Madison and Zoe guessed that it was most likely Rob's doing. They didn't just sit there and picked up the stolen hunting rifles, rushed out and beat the enemy to relieve the pain of being besieged. "I surrender. Don't kill me." An old man broke his leg while running away. He fell to the ground wailing in pain. He heard footsteps behind him and raised his hand in panic. "The crocodile man isn't as magical as you said in the store, is he?" A voice sounded. The old man, old John, looked up when he heard the words and found that the person who was speaking was the girl who was standing in front of the crocodile statue at the gas station during the day. He begged for mercy quickly, "Indeed, indeed. I am far inferior to you. Please spare my life. I am old and will not live long anyway." Zoe raised her shotgun, shook her head and said, "It's just right. Let's judge your crimes before you die of old age." "No." Bang. "It's all over." Zoe raised her gun, calmly stepped over old John's body, and continued to chase forward. Although she is a pure and cute girl, after experiencing the blood and fire tonight, she is ruthless when she takes action. You know, she is the evil witch in people's eyes. The pursuit in the dense forest continues. It wasn't long before Rob, Zoe, and Madison reunited. "That's great, Rob." Looking at the crocodile head that Rob had tied around his waist again after throwing it away, Madison praised it with bright eyes. Zoe's eyes also sparkled. Who doesn't want her boyfriend to be strong and powerful? If the timing wasn't wrong, she would have rushed forward to express her excitement. Rob patted the crocodile head that he had taken as a trophy and was going to hang on the wall when he got back. He smiled and said, "I'll leave the compliments for later. Let's get rid of the remaining few people first." The cult group of about 40 or 50 people now has only a few big and small cats left. Rob, Zoe, and Madison were still chasing when suddenly a series of terrified screams were heard in front of them, but soon the sound quickly died down. Then, a familiar voice sounded, "Shit! I finally see you guys." Rob looked and was relieved. It was Queenie. In the dark, she has naturally concealed skin, and if she hadn't made a sound, she wouldn't have been noticed for a moment. She strode over and a deep wound on her neck could be seen healing on its own, and she was clutching a dagger in her hand. Obviously, the fate of those last few people is clear. Zoe quickly ran to Queenie and asked with concern, "Queenie, are you okay?" Queenie shook her head first, then said in a very unhappy tone, I'm fine, it's just that my pants are wet. Shit. The guy who attacked me chose to knock me out while I was using the toilet. How shameless. Zoe wanted to laugh but held it back. So, you killed him? Of course. Queenie said, still unsatisfied. When I woke up, I found myself tied up in a wooden house. The guy who attacked me put a dagger against my neck and asked me to be quiet. I took the initiative to wipe my neck with the dagger, and asked him to be quiet. Queenie tells her story. Pretty much what Rob had guessed. Queenie went out alone and was hit with a club. In order to meet their reproduction needs, the cultists will not kill her, but will just control her. However, these people underestimated Queenie's ability and were killed by him. When I heard the gunshots and the flames, I knew you were here, so I chased you all the way here. Then I met those guys and killed them. Queenie said finally. After she was safe, she did not try to escape, but was ready to come over to help, but she did not expect that Rob and his men had almost dealt with the situation. Okay. The game of witches versus cults is over. The witches win. Madison threw down the useless shotgun, dusted off his hands, and announced loudly in the tone of a winner. Zoe wasn't as excited as she was. Thinking more, she looked at the bodies scattered all over the ground, frowned and asked Rob, what should we do with these bodies? Rob, throw it into the swamp. It is still necessary to kill and bury the body. Especially when there were dozens of corpses at once. If we really leave it alone and someone finds out, it will definitely be big news. Besides, there's no need to waste the burial ground in the swamp. Even if the matter is exposed by then, given the efficiency of the American police, it will take an unknown amount of time to investigate it thoroughly. But that's for tomorrow. It was pitch dark and it would be very unlucky if you accidentally fell into the swamp after throwing so many corpses. In addition, they were all very tired after fighting for so long, so they returned to the camp they had set up and prepared to rest for a night. Oh Queenie, change your pants quickly, they stink. BCH, why don't you look in the mirror and see what you look like now? You look like you just emerged from a pile of mud. Change your whole body right now. You too, I have a box of mineral water here, do you need any? Listening to the witches' quarrel, Rob dragged away the horse-faced man who had been shot in the head by him in the camp to prevent the bad smell from affecting his sleep. After simply changing his clothes, he went back to the tent to rest. While he was half asleep, there was another person beside him. Faintly, it seemed that there was another person approaching. My nose smells a familiar scent. Never mind, go to sleep. Chapter 44. The next day. A scream broke the morning calm. Madison! Why are you here? Zoe exclaimed. She had just woken up and wanted to stay in the tent for a while, but there was one more person in the tent. She stood up and looked around, only to see Madison sleeping soundly on the other side. Zoe questioned Madison loudly. Madison, who was awakened from her sweet dream, did not panic at all. Under Zoe's murderous gaze, she yawned naturally, stood up and stretched openly, then pretended to be surprised. Isn't this my tent? Oh, I went to the wrong place. I'm so sorry, I was so tired last night and my eyes were blurry. But I had a great sleep. I envy you, Zoe. Zoe's eyes widened at the perfunctory explanation and the wolfish ambition revealed in the words. Although she has a good temper, it would be abnormal for her not to be angry at this moment. Sparks were seen flashing inside the tent and the temperature was rising. Madison's words instantly broke Zoe's defense. Rob is in great shape. Zoe, how are you guys doing? Zoe was stunned. Then, I felt inexplicably guilty. At this time, Madison, who had just remembered, apologized quickly. I'm sorry, I almost forgot how special you are. How pitiful. Zoe couldn't help but lower her head. This is not the Celestial Empire. Unlike some girls who are good at tea art, who call themselves boyfriends or girlfriends, but actually keep you hanging on purpose and never let you succeed. In a situation like Zoe's, if it had been delayed for too long, most people would have packed up their bags and run away long ago. Madison warned again, be careful of the women out there. If they find out what's good about Rob, they won't hesitate to snatch him away from you. Are you sure you're not talking about yourself? Zoe glanced at Madison speechlessly. Madison had a very calm expression on her face. She raised her perfectly trimmed eyebrows, and suddenly leaned close to Zoe's ear and said in the tone of an old driver, do you want me to teach you? Zoe blushed, but still listened attentively. As for the previous questioning and conflicts, they had almost been forgotten in Madison's beating and cutting. Rob listened. I have to say, Madison is ABCH in Queenie's eyes. But it feels really good to have ABCH who only cares about you. Seeing that the two women had almost finished their conversation, Rob stood up and greeted them. Hey, beauties, good morning. Good morning, Rob, Zoe, and Madison responded in unison. What are you talking about? Nothing. Zoe answered first. Madison on the side raised her beautiful eyebrows at Rob. Seeing this, Zoe's eyes moved slightly, but she didn't say anything else. Days like this are wonderful. It's a pity that his leisure time is only about 1 month, Rob sighed. It would be great if there wasn't that mission indicator. Rob shook his head. At this moment, he would not be stupid enough to ask Madison why she appeared here in such a cool outfit. He stood up, patted the two women and said, let's go and deal with those bodies. Rob, go to the crocodile man first. Madison said suddenly. Rob asked in confusion, what's wrong? I heard from those people last night that the crocodile man can actually do that. I want to go see it with my own eyes and cut it off by the way. Madison said with a wave of his hand excitedly. Rob moved slightly away from Madison. He was somewhat tempted to overturn his previous idea. Zoe looked at Madison in shock, you want this too? Madison rolled her eyes at Zoe and said, you're surprised by what you've seen. I heard that stuff soaked in wine is very effective for men. This is something that came from China. Rob, don't you know? Madison looked at Rob again and explained, if you sell it to those men in Hollywood, you will definitely make a fortune. I only know about making wine with snakes, but I've never heard of making wine with eagles. Rob said he was ignorant. But no matter what, Madison just had to take it back and collect it. As for making money, it's also a good thing to cheat those Hollywood idiots. Rob takes Madison to the crocodile man's burial site. Zoe went along. While monitoring Madison, she was also somewhat curious about the structure of the crocodile man. When passing by Queenie's tent, Madison deliberately shouted at her to get up. The result was that after some fighting, the four of them went together. The sea of fire from last night had already gone out by itself, leaving only a charred ground. I think it won't be long before everything returns to normal thanks to the powerful healing power of the swamp wetlands. Accompanying a group of witches who wanted to see the eagle, Rob came to the hillside where he fought with the crocodile man. Fortunately, the headless body of the crocodile man was not damaged. The commotion last night caused the animals in the area to run away in panic. It really exists. When he came to the crocodile man's corpse, Madison didn't care about the stench and dirt. He picked up a branch, and after a few movements, he actually picked out the destination of this trip. Although Zoe and Queenie were not as direct as Madison, they also looked on curiously. Americans here learn a lot of physiology classes early on in school, and coupled with cultural influence, they are not as shy as Oriental girls. It's a little weird, but it definitely fits the curiosity of those people in Hollywood. Madison commented without any emotion. After all, after climbing high mountains again and again, I have lost interest in looking at lower mountains. Coincidentally, Zoe also looked back after watching. Rob straightened his chest. At this moment, he was somewhat grateful for the Book of Shelter. Certainly. After all, it's because of my good foundation. Knife. Madison then reached out to Rob. Rob came back to his senses, glanced at the Palin sword on his waist that had brought him great military exploits last night, and quickly shook his head to refuse. He wanted to continue using this excellent weapon for chopping people, and he couldn't let it go to waste here. Finally, Madison took the dagger from Queenie, and with a flick of the knife, he put the spoils into the prepared glass bottle. Just wait until you get back and soak it in wine. Chapter 45. Plop. Plop. Rob and Zoe threw corpses into the swamp one by one. After splashing some water, they quickly sank. In the future, they may be eaten by crocodiles or sink into the mud, never to see the light of day again. Perhaps, only when a severe drought that occurs once in 1,000 years strikes this place can it reappear in the world. Of course, by then there would be far more than just a few dozen bodies. If Rob could think of an excellent place to bury the bodies, how could the black and white people who had lived nearby for hundreds of years not know it? This is much safer than digging a hole and sinking it into a lake. There's only one batch left. After throwing the bodies on the boat, Rob and Zoe paddled back to the shore. Madison, who was in charge of the land transportation, took a look at the last body dragged by Queenie, and after reminding Rob and the others, he was about to use his mind to move the last few bodies to the boat. A female voice suddenly came from behind, "Did you kill these people?" Madison was startled and turned her head quickly, only to see a young girl in a tattered skirt who looked a little nervous appearing here at some point. "Do you know them?" Madison's eyes turned cold, and he turned his palm slightly, ready to take action if there was any disagreement. Having killed so many people last night, she didn't mind killing one more to avoid unnecessary trouble caused by the news leaking out. The girl with long wavy golden hair and dark eyeshadow shook her head first, then looked at the corpses on the ground with a look of sorrow and said, "I don't know them. But life shouldn't be erased so hastily. They should have enjoyed more time, good food and music, and experienced the beauty of the world. If you knew what they did to us last night, you wouldn't feel sad about the death of these scumbags. Believe me, their death is the greatest contribution they can make to other people and to the world." Queenie, who also noticed the stranger, walked over and explained. "It's rare that you agree with me." Madison glanced at Queenie, then turned back to look at the strange girl and said with a smile, "Want to learn to fight for justice like the superheroes in the movies? This is not a wise choice, girl. You clearly saw us murderers dumping the bodies. The best thing you should do now is to hide, instead of ending up with them. Tell me, how do you want to die? Burned? Shot? Knife killed?" Madison waved her hand, and the shotgun and dagger on the ground flew up, pointing at the strange girl. In her eyes, she would not let this girl go, whether she was dead or alive. "In that case, there's no harm in exposing your abilities, and you can also see the girl's reaction." Madison looked over with amusement. Sure enough, seeing the floating shotgun and dagger, the strange girl was very surprised and said, "Which? That's right." Madison snapped his fingers. "It just so happens that the Great Mother of Darkness needs a young and energetic female sacrifice. Since you have offered yourself to me, I will sacrifice you." Mother of Darkness? Sacrifice? Witches also have people to serve. Unexpectedly, when she heard that she was going to be sacrificed, the strange girl did not show any fear, regret, despair or the like. Instead, she showed an expression of strange confusion. "It's as if I haven't figured anything out." Seeing this, Madison was wondering whether he should use more force to make the other party more aware of the reality. The boat reached the shore, and Rob, who came up to them, interrupted and said, "Okay, Madison, stop scaring people." Then he turned his head and looked at the strange girl with surprise in his eyes. "I didn't expect that another witch of Salem blood would appear here and get to know everyone in this way." Rob greeted the girl and explained, "What Queenie said just now is right. These people are cultists who have shed the blood of many innocent people. Last night they turned their knives on us. They just didn't expect there were witches here, and we killed them in return." Rob spoke patiently, and then showed the crocodile man's corpse that had not yet been processed to the other party. "The legendary Crocodile King, the Lord of the Swamp. When I lived in the swamp, I heard a lot of killing and crying caused by it. I didn't expect it to die here. I believe what you said. Misty Day, it's nice to meet you." Witnessing the death of the crocodile man, it was like a huge stone falling. Misty, a girl in a good mood, greeted everyone with a smile. Madison crossed her arms and pouted, "Trying to infiltrate us so soon? That won't do. Rob, are you sure she can keep this secret?" "Don't worry. I'll keep it a secret." Misty assured him before Rob responded, "Actually, I'm a witch just like you." "Witch?" Except for Rob, Madison, Queenie and Zoe all looked surprised. "Yes." Misty nodded repeatedly. To prove herself, she looked around and found a dead fish with its belly upside down floating in a puddle. She immediately walked over, took out the dead fish and held it in her palm. Madison, Zoe and Queenie looked over curiously. After a few breaths, amidst Misty's friendly smile, the fish in her palm suddenly jumped up and down. "The dead fish is actually alive." The stunned Queenie expressed everyone's thoughts. Even though he already knew about Misty's abilities, Rob was still shocked when he saw her coming back to life. Resurrection is one of the abilities of the Salem Witch's 7 arrays. It can revive the dead, but it has many limitations and even requires the caster to consume his own vitality. But Misty was different. Born with this ability, she has a deeper level of attainment and suffers much less backlash, which can be called the true hand of God. It is no wonder that after priests and religious fanatics discovered her peculiarity, they stigmatized her as a devil and burned her to death. Simply because she had violated the domain that belonged only to God. Unfortunately, he is not affected by the ability to bring the dead back to life. Rob knew that once he died, his soul would be collected by the Book of Shelter and become number 000. Even the Supreme Witch cannot snatch the souls contained in this extremely special book. Rob looked at Misty, who could be described as a human resurrection pool, and felt very sorry. At this moment, Zoe remembered something and said in surprise, "Misty Day? This name sounds familiar. Are you the young witch that Myrtle mentioned, who was burned alive by a group of believers because her ability to resurrect was discovered?" When Myrtle came to pick her up, when explaining the current survival crisis of the witches, she specifically gave the example of a girl who was about her age and was burned to death in the name of an evil witch, but was not discovered in time by the witch group and suffered a tragic end. Zoe, who had just discovered she was a witch, was impressed. Chapter 46. Misty grabbed her messy long hair, thought for a moment, and nodded. "It seems that I am the only witch who has been burned recently who fits the description." Zoe was surprised and said, "You are not burned." "I'm sorry, I mean how come you are fine now?" "Who knows? When I woke up and found I still had breath, I smeared the burns with feces. Look. There it is." Misty took out a ball of grey, sticky feces from her backpack and excitedly handed it to everyone. "There are tillandsias and alligator poop all over the Louisiana swamps, and they have great healing properties. Nature has a way of doing things, so I got well pretty quickly." "Oh my god!" Madison covered her nose and stepped back. Rob, Zoe, and Queenie were too embarrassed to be so rude, so they had to force a smile and look at the feces so close to them. Misty, who was unaware of herself, or rather preferred to live in her own world, enthusiastically introduced her treasure to everyone, then took it back and said in a good mood, "I knew I wasn't the only witch, there must be someone like me. I didn't know how to find you. Fortunately, when I was meditating in the forest today, I felt something calling me. Although I don't know what it is, I know I must respond to the call. As a result, I met you. I'm grateful for the calling, now I know I'm not alone anymore." After that, she sang a cheerful song to herself, her singing voice is like a silver bell across the night sky. Don't you want to love her? She is like a flying bird, in control of her own life, where will her love fly to? Looking at Misty singing and dancing there, Zoe and her group looked at each other, always feeling that the other party seemed very different from them. When the song ended, Zoe stepped forward and invited with a polite smile, "Misty, would you like to go back to the Witch Academy with us? Principal Cordelia welcomes every new witch. There, you don't have to worry about being threatened by the outside world. In addition, the Academy will also help you better control your abilities." To her surprise, Misty shook her head without hesitation and said, "No. I still prefer living here. Besides, if I follow you, I feel like I'll get into trouble, big trouble." Zoe wanted to persuade her, but Madison stopped her and said, "Come on, if she doesn't want to go, why is she begging? To be honest, if the council hadn't forced me to come here, I wouldn't want to stay any longer. This place is too far from Los Angeles, and I don't know if anyone will recognize me when I return to Hollywood." "Don't worry, not many people know you now," Queenie interjected in time. "Shit." While the two girls were arguing again, Rob found a piece of paper and a pen, wrote down the address of the Witch Academy and his phone number on it, and handed it to Misty, saying, "If you run into any trouble or want to go out and have fun, you can go to this address. We're there most of the time. If it's inconvenient, you can call me. Are they okay?" Misty looked at Madison and Queenie who were arguing more and more with some concern, took the paper without refusing, and asked. Rob looked back and said calmly, "Don't worry, this is their way of enhancing friendship. Just get used to it." "To improve friendship? That's really strange." Misty shook her head, retracted her gaze and looked at Rob in front of her. Suddenly she sniffed her nose, with a hint of intoxication in her eyes, and said, "Your breath of life is so strong, no wonder you can kill the Lord of the Swamp who despises life. Can you come to my place to play? Do you like music? I can teach you to sing. Also, the food I cook is delicious." Possessing the ability to bring the dead back to life, Misty has a strong sense of life and death. Rob was the most alive person she had ever met. She had an immense love for life and instinctively wanted to get close to it. This is also the reason why she completely ignored Zoe, whose face was getting darker and darker, and directly told Rob her address and extended a warm invitation. If Zoe had felt a little regretful before about Misty not joining the Witch Academy, she definitely didn't feel that way now, and was even a little happy. Madison, who was eyeing her eagerly, was enough to worry her. What would happen if there was another Misty? Rob was a little confused at first about Misty's special look. Then, after thinking for a moment, he almost understood that it was caused by his 2.0 physique. With his girlfriend by his side, Rob wouldn't be stupid enough to say the wrong thing. After exchanging a few simple courtesies, Madison and Queenie stopped their friendly conversation out of exhaustion, fearing that staying here too long would attract attention, and so the two sides parted ways. Watching Misty's departing back, Rob asked the girls to clean up the remaining corpses. To be on the safe side, they burned the crocodile man's headless body to prevent other creatures from eating his flesh and blood and becoming a new generation of crocodile men. Only then did they drive away after this unpleasant thing happened. After a democratic vote, the group did not immediately return to New Orleans. Having been disturbed last night and feeling that the camping trip was not complete, they turned back to the originally planned destination, where they happily played the whole day without any surprises, and then finally went home. It is worth noting that under the double pressure of Madison and the newly emerged Misty, Zoe took the initiative to try the method that Madison taught her during the day on Rob that night. The next day, when Rob drove back to downtown New Orleans, he unexpectedly discovered that there were many more pumpkin lanterns on the streets, and scarecrows, skulls, spider webs, black cats and other things were hung in front of many shops. Seeing that a few people on the street couldn't wait to dress up as zombies, vampires, witches, Frankenstein, etc., Rob suddenly realized, so today is Halloween. Halloween, to be exact, Zoe corrected. Compared to the real Halloween, Halloween Eve is the most lively time of the festival. Adults put on scary and weird makeup, wear strange clothes, parade in the community and on the streets, and hold some kind of unique party. Children will dress up as cute ghosts and knock on doors from house to house, asking for candy, otherwise they will play tricks. This is a carnival for the whole nation. Very popular among Westerners, but not so popular in the East. Just looking at the three women beside him who were calm, Rob asked with some surprise, "Why aren't you excited at all?" Chapter 47. Why aren't you excited at all? Rob was a little surprised when he saw the three women who showed no excitement at all. It's normal that I'm not interested in Western festivals like Halloween, but why are these three people who were born and raised here not interested in it? I'm tired. Queenie stretched his huge body on the seat and said weakly. Boring. Madison, who was browsing the internet on her phone, said without even looking up. Zoe told the truth in detail, I used to like dressing up as a wicked witch to scare people. Now that I'm a real witch, there's no point in pretending anymore. To put it bluntly, after seeing real witches, evil spirits, mutant crocodile people, etc., it is no longer interesting to look back at these people's shabby costumes. After all, how can a fake compare to the real thing? Madison suddenly spoke up, but the ghost party tonight is still pretty good. Rob, do you want to go and have some fun? You dress up as a werewolf and I dress up as a vampire, how about we continue the 1,000-year bloody battle? Werewolves versus vampires? A 1,000 years of bloody battle? Madison, you're getting bolder and bolder lately, you know? Rob glanced at Zoe, who had an expressionless face, and coughed twice. He suppressed his eager heart and said righteously, No, I'm too tired these 2 days. I'd better have a good rest when I go back. Zoe's face relaxed when she heard this, and then she turned to Madison and advised with concern, Think about the fraternity party, Madison. The smile that had just appeared on Madison's lips suddenly froze. A witch and a Hollywood star, being bewitched by a small-time punk is a stain that she will never be able to wash away in her life. That fraternity party? What happened? What happened? Queenie, as if she had smelled something, propped herself up and asked excitedly. She was happy to collect any embarrassing things that happened to Madison. Nothing. Madison stopped him quickly. Zoe watched all this with a chuckle. Just like that, amid the noise of fighting, Rob drove back to the Witch Academy, just in time to see Spaulding happily setting up a scarecrow outside the court. When he noticed them coming back, he instantly returned to his original stiff self. It would be more appropriate to put up a statue of a wicked witch outside, Spaulding. After Rob made the suggestion, he led the witches into the house without caring whether the other party responded or not. As soon as he pushed the door open, Queenie shouted to Delphi who was cleaning the hall, Delphi! Go and prepare some pudding and yogurt for me, I'm hungry. Delphi's face instantly fell, oh god. It's only been a few days, can't I rest a little more? By the way, please help us cut some fruit. Rob, who didn't eat much in the morning, said. Delphi glared at Rob indignantly. She had not forgotten that when Bastion attacked a few days ago, the other party forced her to be a meat shield. No matter how much you glare at me, you still have to do what you have to do. Unlike Queenie, who has sharp words but never actually does anything violent, Delphi knows exactly how ruthless Rob, who has a bright smile on his face, can be when he really takes action. Welcome back. How was camping? At the dining table, Nan, who heard the noise, still holding her love guide, ran over and asked with a smile. Zoe thought about it and responded, not bad, quite exciting. Nan looked at her, and after a few seconds of silence, he nodded in agreement and said, you guys are really having an exciting time. Apparently, she had just read Zoe's inner thoughts and knew the inside story. Although reading minds is a very unpleasant ability, it is still very good to have it here. At least we don't have to waste our breath on it. Madison picked up the strawberry on the plate and ate it in one bite. Nan, how have you and the boy next door been progressing these days? Very good. Nan responded with a smile. Then, she looked at Madison and said, I wasn't lying. He said he felt comfortable with me. He liked me very much. Kissing? Not yet. His mom is too strict, and the time we spend alone together is too short. Do I need your help? No. You'll only cause trouble. Without giving Madison a chance to speak, Nan quickly answered the question on her mind. Madison rolled her eyes and finally said, I take it back. Mind reading is annoying no matter where it is placed. It just made me look like an idiot. What a bunch of weird girls. In my time, you would all have been burned to death. Delphi, who came over with a tray and saw this scene, said to herself. Madison won't spoil Delphi. She already knew the other party's identity and responded, you know what? A guy like you who is over 200 years old and still alive would definitely be put on the operating table for dissection and research in this era. The White House and those old guys on Wall Street are very interested in people like you. Delphi was suddenly speechless. As expected, evildoers need to be punished by evildoers. Rob smiled. Listening to the children playing outside, he suddenly remembered something and asked, Delphi, are you ready for candy tonight? Candy? Why do we need to prepare candy? Delphi asked puzzled. Today is Halloween Eve. Rob was also puzzled. As a foreigner, he knew that on this night there would be children coming to ask for candy or to play tricks. Americans themselves should know this. Delphi wondered, shouldn't I be allowed to light a bonfire and serve food to the demons to keep them away from us? You know, evil spirits will walk the earth at night. If we can't protect ourselves, the dead will wake up and disasters will follow. Rob was stunned for a moment and asked the people around him, what did she mean? Madison and Queenie looked at each other and said they didn't understand either. Zoe, who had listened carefully in class, replied, that's how people celebrated Halloween a long time ago. But it's different now. Bonfires are replaced by pumpkin lanterns, and serving sacrifices is replaced by candy. Zoe explained to Delphi in detail how to celebrate Halloween in the new era. Rob was listening on the side, when suddenly his eyes flickered and some vague memories came to his mind. It seems like, what's going to happen on Halloween? I can't remember some of them clearly. Too much time has passed, and the episodes I've watched are never marked with specific dates, and often a long time can pass in one episode. Plus, there are far more people in this world than just witches, and my own intrusion has had an impact. The situation has already changed beyond recognition. Rob generally doesn't pay much attention to past memories. However, Halloween seems to be a little special. After thinking for a while, he asked. Chapter 48. Where's Fiona? Rob asked. Delphi, who was shocked by the change in Halloween customs, replied subconsciously, she went out with Cordelia, saying that they wanted to have a mother-daughter emotional exchange journey. In that case, the problem isn't with Fiona. Who is that? Rob thought of another powerful person in New Orleans who was also very dissatisfied with the Salem witches, Voodoo Queen Mary. Delphi, who was buried alive by her for more than 180 years, was found here, and her former lover Bastien also died here. If I don't retaliate, it would be against the other person's character. Thinking of this, Rob's face changed. He remembered. At the same time, inside a hair salon in the black neighborhood of New Orleans, Voodoo Queen Mary, who had long dreadlocks and wore 2 huge golden earrings, was ordering her subordinates to prepare various props for the ceremony with great anger. At the side, her biological sister, Chantal, was still trying to persuade her, it's dangerous enough outside. Marie, the peace we have worked so hard to achieve should not be broken like this. Perhaps we can resolve this issue through communication. We broke the peace? No. Mary said angrily, it was them. It was those white witches who started it. They dug up the Delphi that I buried with my own hands. That BCH Fiona even came to me to show off. And Bastion. My poor Bastion. Why didn't they think of peace when they cut off his head and sent it to me? But... Chantal tried to persuade. But Marie interrupted impatiently, stop talking. Chantal, I know you mean well. But everything is over, the peace has been broken. If you don't fight back, you might as well lie in bed and wait for death. Now is the crucial moment. I don't have time to argue with you. Either follow me or oppose me. If it's the latter, I advise you to stay out of my way. Mary warned her sister with a cold look. Under the pressure of the Voodoo Queen, Chantal finally bowed her head, I choose to follow you. Very good. Mary nodded with satisfaction. Go get ready. After enduring for so long, Halloween is finally here. Although her heart was filled with hatred, Mary, who knew clearly what era this was not overwhelmed by the provocation when she received the bull's head delivered by Fiona. She was just waiting for today to come. With those guys in strange costumes as cover, I will teach those immature white witches a good lesson. The Voodoo Queen's eyes were full of bloodlust. It's time to sprinkle the secret chamber with the blood of the white witch that she has been thirsting for so long. Night falls. Witches, zombies, ghosts, werewolves, vampires, perverted killers, and even cosplay characters from various movies, TV shows and anime walked out of their homes and appeared in the streets and alleys of New Orleans, officially starting the night parade of 100 demons. Amidst their laughter and deliberate screams, they did not know that real evil spirits had joined them. Let's get started. Inside the secret room, Mary looked at the complicated voodoo rituals that had been drawn on the ground, and as the believers beside her beat strange and eerie drums, she strode into the formation, opened the witch box that had been prepared long ago, took out a thick white python from it, and wrapped it around her neck. Amid the python's cries, she took out another poisonous snake and cut it with the dagger in her hand. Smelly blood quickly flowed out. Boom! Flames appeared out of nowhere. One after another, difficult to understand spells containing inexplicable mysterious power came out of Mary's mouth, spanning more than 10 kilometers and affecting a cemetery near the Witch Academy. Bang! 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 Black and rotten arms stretched out from the ground. Soon, corpses that had been dead for many years and were now revived by Mary's spell crawled out of the cemetery and headed towards the Witch Academy with the rage of their masters. Ding dong, the doorbell rang. Delphi opened the door, and a bunch of little ghosts immediately laughed and said, "Trick or treat if you don't give me candy." Delphi took out the candy plate that she had prepared and handed it over while warning, "Don't be greedy. Each person can only take one." No one listened to her. Soon, the little devils each ran away with handfuls of candy. A bunch of little robbers. Delphi closed the door angrily and took out a candy to reward himself. In the living room, Rob was playing Texas Hold'em with Zoe, Madison, and Queenie, with Nan, whose ability was too poor, acting as the dealer. After realizing that there was a high possibility of being attacked tonight, he naturally would not let the combat power around him go. Like Madison, who was originally planning to go out for a drink, was forcibly pulled back by him. Throwing away the cards in his hand, Rob asked Madison beside him in a relaxed manner, after the last haunted hotel incident, "Madison, have you received any Hollywood movie offers?" He is no longer the rookie he was in the beginning. After several battles with supernatural beings, he is no longer nervous and anxious. He now has the leisure to think about what he and Madison said when they left the Montelion Hotel. Madison, who gets excited when talking about Hollywood, curled her lips and said, "It really exists." "Oh? Really?" Rob was a little surprised. He didn't expect that a joke he made would come true. "Sure enough, this is an era of entertainment to death." "What movie?" he inquired. "Madison, low-budget horror movies. Like you said, after I hooked up with the haunted hotel, the idiots in Hollywood only offered me horror movies. Queenie at the side laughed and said, I know. It's the kind of movie where the heroine is wearing revealing clothes and screaming while being chased by a killer, full of X and violence. Madison curled her lips and rarely refuted. Apparently, Queenie was absolutely right. But Madison, you're not very suitable. Your breasts are not big enough. Queenie said bluntly. Madison sneered, Queenie, you are quite suitable, but I don't know if there is any film company that dares to hire you. After that, she turned to Rob without paying any more attention to him and said, Cordelia and the board of directors will not agree to my taking a few months off to film. Of course, I also look down on those small movies with an investment of only a few million, so I rejected them all. You can try the Crocodile Man's Big Eagle. Some producers and directors may really need it. Zoe, who had learned some bad things, suddenly suggested. Good idea. Madison's eyes lit up as she thought of the special tonic wine she was brewing in the room. Rob was silent. He always felt that the thing was a scam. But since Madison was so confident, he didn't bother to attack the other party. Ding dong. Coincidentally, the doorbell rang again at this time. Chapter 49. Trick or treat if you don't give me candy. Familiar laughter sounded, and the already skilled Delphi reluctantly took out the few candies and said, Don't move, I'll distribute it. Noticing that a young man suddenly appeared behind the group of children, she glared at him unhappily, There's no place for you. The young man gave a polite smile, Of course, I mean I'm not here for candy. I live next door and I have something I want to give to Nan here indoor. Zoe, who heard the noise, smiled and said to Nan, Nan, your boyfriend has brought you a gift. It's not done yet. Nan said with a smile on his face, and quickly got up from the chair and watched the young man run away. Is this true? Madison put down the cards in his hand and said in surprise as he looked at the couple talking intimately at the door. Rob glanced at Madison and knew exactly what the other person was trying to say. There's nothing I can do about it, since I am a person who pursues spiritual feelings. Unlike him, he is a vulgar person who pursues beautiful face, beautiful breasts, and beautiful legs. Not long after, Nan, who had taken over the cookies made by the young man, brought him over and introduced them to the others, except for Zoe, who she had already met before. I'm Luke, the new neighbor next door. Nice to meet you. The sunny young man Luke introduced himself with a smile. Queenie. Queenie waved her hand to welcome him. Madison Montgomery. Madison, who wanted to verify it, just showed a charming smile, and saw Luke pass by her without any reluctance and look at the last person. Her expression froze for a moment. Rob saw this and shook his head in amusement. He greeted Luke, Rob. Welcome. Nan has mentioned you many times in the past few days. Today we finally meet you in person. Really? Luke looked at the somewhat shy Nan with joy, then turned around and said, Actually, I've wanted to visit you for a long time, but was delayed by some trivial matters at home. Rob smiled and said, You are welcome to come and play with Nan often. A group of people started to communicate happily. Only Madison seemed a little out of place. She found an opportunity and gritted her teeth in Rob's ear unwillingly, there must be something wrong with him. This woman. Rob reminded seriously, don't disturb Luke and Nan's relationship. Also, believe in your own charm. As he spoke, he quietly explored Madison with one hand. Madison's anger turned into joy in an instant. Just as she was about to fight back after throwing Luke away, Rob's brows suddenly tightened. Hearing a lot of chaotic footsteps outside, he patted Madison's hand, stood up, walked to the window, opened the curtains and looked out. Just at this moment, the dark clouds in the sky drifted away, and the bright moonlight shone down, illuminating the hideous and rotten corpses that were slowly approaching the Witch Academy. Dong dong, there was another knock on the door. Delphi opened the door again out of habit. Rob called out to her, Don't move. Delphi was stunned, and stopped when she saw Rob's face full of solemnity and seriousness. Rob walked quickly to the front of the group, gave Madison a look, and ordered, Let him sleep. Madison said nothing and looked at Luke. The latter only felt a strong sense of sleepiness rising in his heart, his eyelids fluttered quickly, and he fell on the sofa beside him. Rob, still feeling unsafe, pulled out the Palin dagger he had already equipped, and knocked Luke on the back of his head with the handle of the knife. Only then did he feel completely relieved. It happened so fast. By the time everyone reacted, Luke had already fallen into a deep sleep, Nan hurried over and checked on Luke with an anxious look on his face. Queenie held her head in her hands and said in disbelief, "Shit. Rob, Madison, what are you doing?" Rob quickly explained, "There are enemies outside. If you don't want to expose your identity as a witch, you must knock Luke out." "Nan, are you ready to tell Luke your identity yet?" Nan, with red eyes, hesitated for a moment and nodded. "Then I did the right thing," said Rob. "Girls, brace yourselves, another attack on witches is coming. Delphi, you don't need to be a human shield this time. Carry Luke upstairs and hide. Remember to protect our guests. By the way, call Spaulding down. Why is a grown man hiding? Nan, you go up too." Since Cordelia and Fiona were not there, Rob, who acted as half-master, gave quick instructions. Zoe ran to the window to check and shouted, "Zombies! There are a lot of zombies outside that look just like the ones in the TV series." Rob explained, "That's not a zombie, it's a voodoo resurrection corpse. But it's also the inspiration for the former." Seeing this, everyone dared not delay any longer. Delphi and Nan hurriedly took the unconscious Luke upstairs. Rob, Zoe, Madison, and Queenie prepare for battle. "Really? You can't even behave yourself even after coming back." Queenie grabbed the dinner knife and said with an unhappy look on her face. She wasn't too worried about the upcoming resurrected corpses. Not only her, but others as well. After all, they had just killed the alligator man and his cult, and their hands were still hot. Madison said excitedly, "It was a really exciting experience. I decided to write these things into a script, and it will definitely be a hit when it is made into a movie. Remember to write me as the male protagonist." Knowing that bullets were useless, Robert came to the door with a knife. "Of course." Madison agreed readily. Zoe continued, "Then I want to be the heroine." Madison immediately shook her head, "Don't even think about it. I'm the heroine." In order to avoid internal unrest before the battle even started, Rob simply opened the gate. Looking at the three daughters of Delphi who had died many years ago standing side by side at the door, Rob greeted them politely, "Hello." With a flash of knife light, three hideous and ugly heads instantly flew into the sky. Plop! 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 Three headless bodies fell down in unison. Stepping over them, Rob, knife in hand, walked toward the courtyard with the young witches. At the same time, Mary, who was far away in the secret room of the hair salon, was floating in the air. She opened her tightly closed eyes, revealing her pale pupils, and said coldly, "Start." In an instant, the resurrected zombies who had previously lowered their heads and looked listless raised their heads in unison, raised the weapons in their hands, and strode forward with roars. Suddenly, an extremely surprised and unexpected voice sounded, "Man, your makeup is so cool. It's amazing." Three typical American to-be youths ran to the group of zombies without fully understanding the current situation, and slapped the zombies with their hands to express their envy and admiration. Rob took one look and knew that these three guys were hopeless. Sure enough, just as Zoe was anxiously trying to remind them, the three young men's faces instantly turned from joy to fear, and they were quickly disemboweled amidst loud screams. Stimulated by the blood, the zombies attacked Rob and the witches even more frantically. Chapter 50. The resurrected corpse is a slave puppet created by voodoo using dead people and witchcraft, and it absolutely obeys the orders of its master. The famous zombie culture got its inspiration from the resurrected corpse. However, unlike zombies who move slowly, the reanimated corpses move very quickly under the command of their masters. The zombie that ran to the front had already raised the rusty axe in its hand and chopped at Rob. A cold light flashed for a moment. Rob, who was faster, had already slashed its neck with a sharp knife. The zombie's movements froze for a moment. However, soon, grains of sand like dust suddenly emerged from the place where the deep wound on its neck was made. After quickly healing its wounds, the zombie roared and attacked again. Ordinary injuries are ineffective. In that case, Rob turned the blade, which was much faster than the zombie, and not only did he easily dodge the opponent's axe, but he also stabbed it straight in the next moment. Phew! The blade of the dagger was completely embedded in the zombie's brain, leaving only the handle outside. When Rob pulled out the dagger again, the wounds of the resurrected corpse did not heal. Instead, it fell down with a bang, just like the three sisters who were beheaded at the door before. Rob, who had figured out the weakness of the revenants, did not hesitate any longer. Instead, he advanced with his sword and killed the other revenants. The other side. After stabbing herself several times and finding that the zombie was fine, Queenie noticed Rob's actions and reacted by stabbing herself in the head. Not only that, after several attempts, she also discovered that the heart was also the zombie's weakness. Zoe and Madison did not pick up knives like Rob and Queenie, but instead cast spells in perfect accordance with their identities as witches. Boom! As Zoe watched, raging flames started to burn on the corpse. Looking at the zombies that had been so hideous before and struggling in the flames with screams, Madison paused his best mind control and started a fire as well. Although there were a large number of revenants, with the joint efforts of Rob and 3 witches, they were quickly defeated one by one without any danger. Seeing the courtyard full of corpses, Rob put away his dagger and called on everyone to clean up the place as soon as possible. Inside the Voodoo Queen's secret room, Mary's body was suspended in the air, her eyes turned completely white, as if she had seen the scene at the witch school. She sneered and ordered, "Continue." As soon as he finished speaking, in the courtyard of the Witch Academy, amidst the shocked expressions of everyone, except for a very few motionless corpses, the resurrected corpses that had fallen down before stood up again at this moment. Not only that, outside the gate, there were more zombies striding towards them carrying various weapons. Shit! What's going on? Queenie, who was about to vomit from being fed, looked at the scene in disbelief. Rob looked at the resurrected corpse beside him whose head had just been chopped off, but which was now connecting and struggling to stand up on its own, and could only sigh that the Voodoo Queen's witchcraft is really not that simple. He kicked the resurrected corpse that had half of its body crawled up and sent it flying. He then looked at the resurrected corpses that were still lying on the ground without any movement. After a quick check, he suddenly had an idea. These resurrected corpses that never woke up had one thing in common. That means the inside of the brain is basically burned out. Although Zoe and Madison burned quite a few resurrected corpses, with simple aiming, most of them were only burned on the torso. It was rare for the flames to burn directly on the head and penetrate deep into the brain. Therefore, these resurrected corpses can be revived again when summoned by Mary. After realizing this, Rob no longer hid his skills, and flames quickly wrapped around the blade. "Am I dazzled? Rob, you can actually summon fire." Queenie, who was still in shock at the resurrection of the zombies, opened her mouth wide again when she saw Rob's move. Zoe and Madison are fine. Having spent more time with Rob and having a closer relationship with him, they naturally felt that Rob was unusual, otherwise he would not have been able to defeat the crocodile man alone. Now that the truth has been revealed, there is more understanding and excitement. We are all on the same path, that's good. Rob didn't care that his abilities were exposed, as they were with the witches. The Salem wizard bloodline is not something that only women can inherit, men can too. It doesn't matter even if I'm mistaken for a wizard. Anyway, throughout history, there has only been a supreme witch, and there has never been a supreme wizard. He didn't have to worry about Fiona causing trouble for him. I didn't expose it before, I just kept it to myself out of habit. If you continue to hide at this critical moment, you will be a fool. There was no time to answer Queenie's question. Rob, holding the flaming dagger in his hand, dodged the attack of a revenant with a flash, then raised the dagger, and the blade easily broke the revenant's jaw. The flames on the blade quickly turned into fire snakes that poured into the interior. Plop! After a moment, the corpse shook and fell down, without any movement. Rob's eyes lit up, and he immediately reminded, aim at the head of the revenant to cast the fire. Zoe and Madison did so. The heads of the resurrected corpses were quickly set on fire, and the pressure on the field was relieved. But soon, under Mary's remote control, the zombies who reacted deliberately put their arms in front of their heads, preferring to have their arms set on fire rather than be hit in the vital parts. Madison frowned, and immediately changed his mind. He first used his mind to move the zombie's arm away, and then ignited the fire. But this consumed a lot of her mana. Seeing Rob standing alone in the front fighting against many revenants, Zoe was anxious and simply snatched a relatively intact long axe from the fallen revenant's hand, and imitated her boyfriend to play the melee magician. "Rob, let me help you." Just as he killed a zombie that pounced on him, Rob suddenly heard a familiar voice in his ears. He looked back and saw Zoe holding a flaming axe, rushing towards him as if possessed by the god of war, chopping down several resurrected corpses along the way. Zoe looked at the clothes and face in front of her that were covered in dirty blood and rotten flesh, but her expression did not change at all. Rob was stunned. Is this still my pure and lovely girlfriend? Zoe didn't think much about it. She felt like she had endless energy because she was able to fight alongside her boyfriend instead of just hiding behind and watching. Even within the body, there is a new force that has been hidden for a long time and is ready to move. Just as she was about to attack again, Rob held her down. Go back inside first. Rob's face was serious. Compared to the evil spirits, minotaurs, crocodile men, and zombies encountered before, their strength is very average. There are dozens of them in my hands alone. But the problem is that once they come in groups and continuously, it will become the most difficult trouble. An elephant can be killed by ants. I am not an Iron Man and I will get tired after a long time. It's time to rely on the terrain of the house behind to limit the army of zombies. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you are notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.